Welcome, everybody. Once again, it is Monday, January 22nd, 2024. I am Will Scouch, host of Scouching Live. If you didn't notice, or you're listening to the show, there's no Sam McGilligan this week. He has decided to go on some kind of family vacation to Cuba. So he's away. I spoke to him today. He's soaking up the sun and having a grand old time. Before we get into today's show, I just want to do our ad reads. We're brought to you by Fanatics, so you can click the affiliate link below or scan the QR code in the stream to provide a small kickback to the show on anything you buy in the store. Or you can support Sam and I and a number of other smart people through Puck Preps, which is a subscription service for all your NCAA prospect needs and CHL entry draft needs. Or you can support us through Fractal Hockey Consulting, which is my business for hand-tracked targeted player analysis and recruitment packages for organizations. And of course, we're brought to you by Scouching.ca, which is the website I have founded where you are watching this for exclusive access to innovative data tools, providing tons and tons of insight into draft prospects and players making their mark in the NHL, plus a really fun Discord server that we're all a part of. And it's a grand old time. We're going to talk about a few things tonight. Obviously, we're going to get to your questions in the back half of the show. So if you have any of them, throw them in the chat because I want to see them. And there's lots and lots of room for takes based on tonight's show and based on some of the things we're going to be talking about. So to start, though, we're going to be talking about some silliness that I perpetrated on our last show, and go into a little bit of an explainer of what happened there. We're also going to talk, of course, about Patrick Waugh and the reintroduction of him as a head coach in the National Hockey League, as he coaches the New York Islanders, and they're getting started into a new era. It's also Bob Father Day, so happy Bob Father Day to draft geeks like me. Bob McKenzie dropped his draft ranking, and boy howdy, is there a lot to dig into on that. And then AJ and I, producer AJ, who I'll introduce in a moment, we're going to speak a little bit further about the potential contenders for the Stanley Cup, as we did last week, and talk about some of the potential trade targets, because there's a little bit more and more trade talk going on in the NHL. So we're going to go through a little bit of that team by team and see what we can unearth. As I mentioned, I am joined by producer AJ. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing all right. The Leafs won again. It's good.
Yeah, the Leafs are good again. They're
really.
figuring it out.
They're just fine.
Well, they played Nick Robertson. He scored a goal again.
The game winner.
And he's gonna bench. He's gonna get benched. It's gonna be awesome.
We'll see, but I actually kind of doubt it now that Sportsnet brought up a bunch of stats of how he's been scoring in such a limited role. He's our Daniel Sprong. Yep. It's amazing.
Yep. So he's going to look great in a Minnesota Wild jersey or something.
I hate you, Will.
I know. I love to tease AJ about the Toronto Maple Leafs because I'm an old soul from Toronto, and I've been through a lot. But that's okay. We'll gush a little bit about the Leafs in a few minutes. I know someone has reached out to me privately and made jokes about how Leaf-centered this show has become. So we're going to try to fix that. First thing we're going to talk about today is a poor choice of words that resulted in me looking a little bit silly in a short and a TikTok that we put up. The words I said were that the Vancouver Canucks were slowing down. A team that has won cooling down, which is a very dumb thing to say because wins matter. They're the thing that matters, and they're winning hockey games. They're winning a lot of hockey games, and they're winning actually more hockey games than they were before, which is crazy to me. But my point from that section of the show still remains. And I pulled some information that will add more context, and then we'll quickly move on to something else because I don't want to talk about this forever. It was just a dumb thing. But December 1st is the benchmark I set. So since December 1st, the Vancouver Canucks at 5-on-5 are shooting 14.3%, which is by far the most in the league. The NHL average shooting percentage is around 10%. So they're beating the average by about 40%. So again, seems a little bit insane. Their total number of expected goals since December 1st is around 43. They've scored 66, and they're getting outshot on average since December 1st at 5-on-5 at a rate that puts them 9th worst in the league with the 4th fewest shots for, and Thatcher Demko has been outstanding.
So Will's correction is Rick Tocchet not for Jack Adams and Rick Bowness for Jack Adams, correct?
No, you know what? No, because at the end of the day, they're winning. Somehow they're finding a way to win, right? Like they shouldn't be scoring as much as they are. They shouldn't be winning as much as they are, but they are. And there you go. So that to me is the added context I would like to add, but obviously a very dumb series of words that I said because people care about wins and they're winning. The other thing I was extremely wrong about, and this didn't take very long for me to realize because of what happened last night, but I'm absolutely incorrect about Austin Matthews and how many goals I thought he was going to score because he already has scored 3, I believe, since the show last week. I don't know if he scored on Saturday night. I don't think I watched that game. But
he
scored
38.
Yeah, he's up to 38 goals, which means that to meet my benchmark, he has to score 19 between now and the end of the year. So 19 in about 38 games. I feel like he could do that quite easily at this rate.
He's on pace for 70, Will.
Yes, he's on pace for 70. So he would need a heck of a finish of not scoring goals to not beat my benchmark. But as I said in the show, I set my Colby bar low, and I hope that people surpass it. I'm an optimist. I'm an optimist wrapped in a pessimist, I think, is how I would put it. So, but I will admit, Austin Matthews going out and scoring a bunch of goals since last Thursday made me feel a little silly. Especially some of them were just unbelievable goals scored by an unbelievable 5-on-5 goal scorer.
The question is, are you optimistic about Patrick Waugh as the head coach of the New York Islanders? Because that is what the title of our show is right now.
Yes, it is. If you're not aware, if you've been living under a rock as a hockey fan, Lane Lambert was let go by Lou Lamoriello with the New York Islanders, and he replaced him with Patrick Waugh, who has previously been coaching with the Quebec Remparts of the QMJHL and infamously previously coached the Colorado Avalanche to mixed results. He won a Jack Adams trophy. He then exited the team in a very, messy way. I guess you could use that word, messy. But look, I am a little bit more optimistic about it than last time around, and it's because of like the things that he has said about his experience coaching in the NHL and what he wants to do a little bit different. And the big thing he said that stuck out to me was that he wants to stay out of who's on the team specifically and the discussions around that. Like he just wants to coach the guys that are on the team, get the best out of them, and just focus on that as his job, which he had trouble, and with Quebec, he was able to sort of have a lot more pull of who they got and who they had and who he played and who they wanted to go out and get, because that's kind of how junior hockey works.
But the NHL unfortunately doesn't. Not.
Yeah, if his face was shaved or not. Of course, Patrick Waugh, clean shaven, coaching the New York Islanders. They won last night in overtime, 3-2 over the Dallas Stars. The shot differentials didn't go in their favor, but they won. And again, winning is what matters. So there's that. Let's get that out of the way. But I mean, AJ, what do you think? Because I don't know how much you remember of Patrick Waugh coaching the
not
Colorado
a ton,
Avalanche.
Because I was 13 years old.
Right, you were a child.
But I think it's an interesting move. Initially, I thought it was kind of, I don't know, I just looked at it as kind of crazy. But the more I think about it, like I didn't realize just how good his prior coaching record had been, even in the NHL. I forgot that he won a Jack Adams, which is a little embarrassing, I'll admit.
You were a child. I think we can forgive it.
No, I cannot be forgiven. But,
all right, then.
But anyways, just like he's very different to Lane Lambert, and it seems like that's what Lou Lamoriello was going for when hiring him. Because I listened to 32 Thoughts today, as I normally do, and Elliot brought up a good point. Like, think about how Lane Lambert is as a person, and think about Patrick Waugh as a person. Patrick Waugh wears his heart on his sleeve, right? Like, you're gonna get an animated dude. He is a very animated dude, and it feels like a lot of why they made that change, maybe to spark their players, somebody who's going to give them a kick in the ass. Because Lane Lambert just seems like a very composed, calm dude. and that's no slight to Lane Lambert. And I'll admit, coaching can be pretty hard to evaluate sometimes, especially when you don't watch the team every single night, because you don't get super familiar with the systems. But like, I don't see why it isn't such a bad move, especially for a team that's trying to make the playoffs. We know that when you change your coach, you generally get a boost. Like, there's generally a period of time where the team outperforms what they really should. With the Oilers, it's been a long, long time. With the Minnesota Wild,
very, very long time.
There was a point, I think, where they were like 8-3. And now
Yeah,
they've kind of gone back into the depths of the bottom of the league, right? Like,
yeah,
there is something to getting that boost of wins. And I don't know. I look at the New York Islanders as a team that could definitely make the playoffs. They've got a good goalie. They've got some good players and some players that are pretty underappreciated in this league. Brock Nelson is very good, and no one says anything about Brock Nelson.
Anders Lee's been pretty decent too.
I mean, he's been all right, but like, they've got some, like, I like Casey Cizikas. I got to see him live when I was in Pittsburgh, and he really rocked, right? Like, I like Pierre Engvall, but that's just my bias. Hudson Fasching is even a lot of fun. Matt Barzell's sick. Bo Horvat's awesome. Noah Dobson, we talked a lot about on our last show. Like, they've got some good players, right? But
yeah,
I don't know. Like, this team could definitely make the playoffs. I just don't see them doing a whole lot. And I mean, I think the move makes a lot of sense, because if you're gonna get that push to try and win games, go for it, because it's very likely to give a boost.
Yeah, it's really difficult also with coaching changes to really know what's going to happen with them. But I do agree with you in the sense of like someone coming in to maybe tighten the ship a little bit and sort of
or change the
get things a little more structured, or change the perspective.
I was a choir boy as a kid, and we'd never listened to our music teacher. But anytime she'd have like we'd go to certain events where we'd be adjudicated, the adjudicator would come in and reiterate a lot of the same points that my music teacher was telling us. And she'd always say, yeah, I tell them that, they just don't listen. So there's always, sometimes that can happen, right? Like,
yeah,
a new voice can always be good, like can give a boost at times.
Exactly. And I the thing that also, like, the main issue with the Islanders, it seems, is in their own end, and especially the sort of have-nots on their roster and at the bottom end of their roster, and the sort of, they're a little porous of a team, right? Like, their weak points are very weak. They have a good sort of handful of good players at the top, but they're really relying on their goaltending quite a lot, and that's been the case for a little while. And there was a clip of Patrick Waugh going around from practice, and it was the one clip of him that was going around in practice, and I watched it a few times trying to pick up what he was trying to tell them, and it seemed like what he was trying to do was like preach just how important it is to defend the defensive blue line. Like, don't let them cross the blue line. Like, he was basically, from what I could lip read or hear, both, I guess, it was a lot of like, you've got to, like, he was slapping the blue line with his stick, being like, this is where you got to be, right? Like, because I think he said something along the lines of like, you're no good if you're back there and like they've got the speed because they're already there, right? Like, it was like that kind of thing. And so I actually, because I was kind of curious about this, I wanted to see what it was about Patrick Waugh Jr. as a coach that kind of put Quebec maybe more in the echelon of QMJHL teams that they've been in the past with him. And a lot of it is defending. Like, their team, you would think, it's almost like Patrick Waugh, being a goaltender, knows what he wants to see out of a defense group that would be in front of him, right? Like, he has the view of the defensive zone better than pretty much anybody on the ice all game long. So he probably kind of has an idea of like what he needs and what he's looking for and how he can benefit the goaltender. because when you look at Quebec's numbers, like the balance of shots that they would get in the offensive zone from scoring areas versus the balance of shots in their own end that would come from scoring areas, it wasn't a massive difference, but it was a big-ish difference in their own end of what was generally what other teams were doing. So if he's there to sort of say, maybe not put the reins on a guy like Matthew Barzal or a guy like Brock Nelson and try to get them to shore up their defense a little bit, but to work with the defense group and just shore things up there, then I think that would give them a lot more potential for success because that goaltending already is there. Like, I mean, the Islanders teams that went to the conference finals in the last couple of seasons, that was a bit of a surprise. They did it by being a strong defensive team that had great goaltending, but they also, sort of played not a trap style game, but they would sort of sit back and play you hard and keep the game simple and they'd win more games that way. And in the playoffs, it worked, and they just managed to crawl their way through the playoffs. So I don't know. We'll see. I don't know about you, but I look at the Islanders roster and see a team that very well could be a playoff team. Like, are they going to make huge waves? I don't know, but also it's the New York Islanders. Like, they've gone to the playoffs before and surprised everybody like multiple times. So the idea of them doing that again with mostly the same players that they've had for a number of years doesn't seem that crazy. So I think that Patrick Waugh,
and some improved players too, like Noah Dobson is a legit number one guy, at least at this point. And it's not like they don't have good defensive personnel. Like, Ryan Pulock's out. He's been out for quite a while.
Yeah.
What that's going to do when he gets back into the lineup, especially if they're implementing a system where they're preventing defensive zone entries. Yeah, defensive zone entries. That's going to be huge for their ability to just prevent goals from happening. Because the number one thing I would want if I was a coach, don't give up the blue line. Challenge them.
Yeah.
Be aggressive and don't let the puck get in your own zone. Because the more time you spend with the puck and out of your own zone, the more likely you are to be scoring goals and actually taking control of the game.
Yeah,
so to hear what you've said about Patrick Waugh slamming his stick against the blue line, saying basically defend this with your life, that's massive. And I think that this is probably the right move.
Yeah, and I mean, you and I kind of agree that, especially with your forwards, like, guys who can really skate are super, super valuable and super, super important, and can cover, guys who can cover a lot of ice, I guess. And I think the big reason for that, right, but I think the big reason for that tactically is because you want forwards to be able to protect their defenders, right? Like, if you're gonna hold up that defensive blue line, you got to have forwards there ready to sort of fill in that space in the defensive zone, right? Like, if a hit or a stick check or just the presence of a player causes a forward on the opposing team to chip the puck past that defenseman, well, you want to win that race, right? Like, you need forwards who can get there, and you need forwards who can quickly get the play coming back the other way. Like, when I was watching the LA Kings penalty kill early in the year, when it was really, really ripping, they were doing that so well. They had three guys clogging the blue line, the defensive blue line, but they had a guy closer to the inside closer to the middle of the ice, who could pivot really well, pick up the puck behind them and just fire it over to the one guy on the other side of the ice, and or just ice it himself, right? Like, it would be make a read and make a play. So it's a system for, to me, really, really preaching that and really, really leaning into that defensive blue line interaction as an important thing, rather than sitting back and sort of trapping guys in more of a formation.
It sucks to play reactionary. Why don't you be proactive and go and take the game to the other team? It's one of the many frustrations I have as a Leaf fan.
Yeah, and if you're gonna play that way, you just have to surround the players with the right players, right? Like, you have to surround the guys who are defending with the right forwards who can fill in that space, and because there is a risk, right? Like, I see it all the time, especially at junior hockey levels, where junior hockey players, defensemen, will just chase the physicality, right? Like they'll just see the puck enter the neutral zone and it's not a perfect crisp pass, and they immediately just go, I'm gonna crush this guy. And sometimes it works, right? Like sometimes you hit the guy and it, you cause the turnover, puck goes the other way, but they could also just chip it right past you. And the forwards often in the junior levels aren't really the quickest people, and they're still back checking. They're not there to cover for the defenseman. And the next thing you know, it's a 2-on-1 or a 3-on-2 or whatever coming the other way. And that defenseman, who may have thrown a fun hit, has just left a massive hole on the ice. But in the NHL, I think you can get away with that a lot more easily, because I think the Islanders have some guys that can really skate and really move and can maybe help with that style of play. So we'll see. I mean, is he the right choice? I can't say. I don't know. I love that Patrick Waugh is back though, because like when he was a coach in the NHL, like you and I talk all the time, like the NHL needs drama. They need personalities.
Yes.
They need people who aren't afraid to go in front of the media or go in front of a camera or whatever and speak to their personality, right? And Patrick Waugh has done that ever since I was born, like longer than I've been alive. He's been doing that. So, is that really like a Lou Lamoriello style of employee? I don't know.
Doesn't seem
I'm
like
not
it,
sure.
especially
Doesn't
the way
seem
he
like
runs his ship, right? Always tight-lipped.
Yeah, but maybe Lou is and trusts him enough where he goes, yeah, be yourself. Just don't like break the boards trying to get at an opposing team's coach like he did the last time he was around.
That was
maybe
awesome.
cool it a little bit when you get mad, but like other than that, if you want to whip out another I have 2 Stanley Cup rings plugging my ears thing, go nuts, because that would be awesome. It would be a ton of fun, and people still play that soundbite 2 decades later, and it's just the best. Over 2 decades.
Because it rocks, Will.
Yeah, it does.
The level of bad word insert here. The level of douchebaggery in that clip is awesome.
Well, and the fact that it was also directed at Jeremy Roenick too was just hilarious to me. I just remember that at the time. Like there was a few of those when I was younger that also made the NHL so much more interesting, where players were going at it in the media. Like they were going at it, they'd interview them in locker rooms after games, and I don't know, you get it sometimes nowadays, but usually it's just, oh, this guy on the other team went after one of our guys and hurt him or whatever. But in those days, it was like these guys didn't like each other, and you knew, right? Like they went at each other, and it was a lot of fun. But anyway, I don't want to opine about hockey in the olden days like other old people like me do all the time. But it was a hell of a lot of fun. So if you haven't noticed, I'm wearing my Boston University hockey jersey. And the reason for that is because our almighty father up above, that was my cell phone, never mind. The almighty father up above, Bob McKenzie, has dropped his draft ranking from this season. So what we're going to do is just going to kind of run through, the top guys that were there and sort of just run through it relatively quickly. And then, have some general thoughts put together about who might be a little bit high or who might be a little bit low, or things I'm curious about, because there's definitely a lot of curious things in this year's draft, and I'll explain why in a minute. So obviously, because of the jersey, one Macklin Celebrini was unanimously number one, followed by Anton Salayev, Artyom Levshinov, 2 gigantic Russian sphere of influence defenders, you could say. Cole Eiserman, Caden Lindstrom, 2 more of the physical type of players, but certainly have their fair of skill. You've got Ivan Demidov, Sam Dickinson, Konsta Helenius, Zane Parekh, all kinds of fun stuff. Berkeley Catton at 10 surprised a few people. Trevor Connolly at 11, Carter Yakimchuk, Zeev Buyam, Adam Yuracek, Emil Hemming, Tej Ginla, Liam Greentree, just a whole lot of bangers. Beckett Seneke is one we'll talk about, I think. Michael Brandsegg Newgard is in there as well. And then just the rest of the draft is something we'll talk about quite a bit. So you see on the screen that there's been some players that I think we should speak to specifically, that have been ranked all over the place that could certainly be re-examined and thought about a little bit more. So let's dig into this a little bit and just sort of go. And AJ, I know you've been starting to watch a little bit of these guys when you can, but
Will just forced me into it. He's like, "Hey, you should start doing it now instead of at the end of the year like you normally do."
that sounds exactly like me forcing you to do it, right?
Yeah.
You should do this. Yeah. But anyway, so Macklin Celebrini, the universal top 10 out of 10 people, 10 out of 10 scouts on the survey put him at number 1. And now, AJ, you formed your first hot take after watching the player for one game today, and it's a hot take that I actually have time for, because it also factors in a player that's at number 10.
He's good.
You watched a game of Berkeley Catton and came away so impressed that you kind of liked him
a little more than Macklin. Yeah, it's still early, and I've got time to change my mind, but it's like, he just looks really good, man. And I said something kind of stupid in our Discord, but I also stand by it to an extent where it's like, he kind of looks like Matthews off the puck. Just off the puck. I'm not saying he's going to shoot like Matthews. I'm not saying he is as good as Austin Matthews. Like, that's not at all what I'm saying. But he just reads the game so well and plays like an awesome F3. And that's what Matthews is, a really good F3, right?
Yep.
Is he going to be Matthews? Again, no. I'm just going to keep saying that. He's not Matthews. He's not Matthews. He's not Matthews. But I see a lot of elements, especially in the off-puck game and the way he kind of moves around the ice and stays to the middle. Like, that's where I see it. But I really like him.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. It's just, I also think, like, I mentioned this to you earlier today, but I think that you might have also seen a more, like, a bit of a different style of game out of Berkeley Catton. But, you know, that's something that he does extremely well. But this guy also is just an unbelievable quarterback on the ice, just, you know, patrols the ice extremely well, distributes the puck extremely well. There's just so many things that, based on his IQ, he does extremely well.
Love that my words are already being used against me. Awesome.
I know, right? What a moron.
Thank you,
are.
David. Appreciate
You're the worst. I mean, I don't know. I get the feeling the fact that he's listed at 170 pounds when the guys ahead of him are at 190 or more.
5'11".
And 5'11" probably factors into why he might not have been put that high. And he also doesn't have the skill level of some of the guys that are ahead of him. But that's neither here nor there. But, I mean, my rankings drop at the end of this week for Scouching.ca subscribers. And I'll let you know that Berkeley Catton is extremely high on mine. And I'll let you know that he's in the same conversation for me as Macklin Celebrini as well. So you're not completely out to lunch. I think he's a brilliant player. Different than Celebrini for sure. Different, but extraordinarily impressive. In the top 10, though, I mean, there's a lot you could sink your teeth into. You know, Anton Salayev and Artyom Levshinov being 2-3, just it, you know, NHL scouts can't help themselves. You know, these are two guys.
Big D.
Yeah.
Big D.
Big D, big skatey D men. And, you know, look, they're not done developing. They're not done. Anton Salayev has been this tall for a couple of years now. He's been a very big boy. But he's still very uncoordinated and kind of, you know, he's a lot better than he was at the beginning of the year to me. And he is a lot higher on my list than he was at the beginning of the year for sure. But I don't know. My philosophy revolves a lot around, like, not certainty, but hedging your bets, you know, and guys like Salayev and especially Levshinov, are far from finished products. I loved the tidbit in the write-up that Bob McKenzie had from a scout saying that he wasn't sure how much Artyom Levshinov was going to score, but he's still going to be a great physical defender. And I'm sitting there going, that sounds exactly, based on where Levshinov is right now in his game and how he plays, that sounds like what they were saying about Rasmus Ristolainen.
That's so bad.
Because Levshinov is not a good defender, in my view. He gets beat. If he can't hit you, it's not as good, not nearly as good. And even if he can hit you, I've seen guys get through him a little bit easily. And, when I watched Rasmus Ristolainen when he was a draft eligible, that guy played like a forward. That guy was playing with skill, pushing things in the offensive zone. And then he goes to Buffalo when they're terrible and they're really just forcing him to play a defensive role right away, trying to get his defense to be better, trying and trying and trying. Imagine if the Edmonton Oilers played Philip Broberg year one and forced him to play a defensive role. It would, Broberg's not playing top pair minutes or anything, but it wouldn't have been a good idea. And so we'll see what happens with Levshunov, but he's an adventure. Anton Salayev, you're betting on his potential, but I'm not drafting a guy at second overall that I'm kind of crossing my fingers and saying he's really big. So I'm hopeful. I'm hoping that this works out. And especially when you have guys like Caden Lindstrom and Berkeley Catton there, who are, in my opinion, much further along. And I think, being centers and just the way that they play, much, much more impactful now and like projectable to an NHL role. Like, I don't know how many NHLers play like Artyom Levshunov, where he's basically in the offensive zone playing as if he's a forward. He's below the offensive goal line. He's going to the net. He's doing all these things, which is fine. But you don't see it very often in the NHL. Maybe he's the difference maker and bucks the trend. But anyway, Cole Eiserman at 4.
Bouchard is doing and thinking,
yeah.
Evan Bouchard, let's have more of that.
More of that. Cole Eiserman at 4 surprised me based on what I've been hearing about him and how people are sort of starting to slow down on him a little bit, just like the Vancouver Canucks apparently. But Cole Eiserman, I think, really is a tough one for me to crack, because it's funny to me with him so far, with my experience with him this year. Everybody keeps talking about how good of a shooter he is. Everybody's saying, the shot. I've done a bunch of games on him. At 5-on-5, I don't see that shot very often, right? I don't see an elite level shooter at 5-on-5 that's being advertised to me. Maybe I'm just watching literally every single game that is not the right game to watch of his, but he's a player that, in my view, so far has not really come as advertised and has been a guy who, for what I'm looking for in a player, there are signs of something working. There's something there, I think. But again, it's similar to Levshunov and Salayev, where it's like, I think there's a huge amount of risk going that direction in the top 5. You'll get a guy who probably could score goals. I've seen him shoot the puck really well, just not this season in games where I'm watching him at 5-on-5, which is what matters, right? You can get a guy who can shoot on the power play. You can get a guy who can shoot pretty well on the power play, but does a lot of other stuff really well. Make that shot better over the next few years.
You know what that sounds like to me, Will?
Who?
Mike Hoffman.
Yeah, like Mike Hoffman has always been the guy that comes to mind for me and Cole Eiserman. Like, Eiserman has a physical edge to him. I've seen him try to elbow guys in the head and miss so bad he doesn't even make any contact, but he tries. So if you're into that, he does that once in a while. Ivan Demidov at 6 also surprises me. And I'm not going to go through these picks one by one, but these were really interesting to me because Demidov, I think, is showing a lot of sort of the holes in his game this year, but it's so dumb watching him in the Russian Junior League. Like, he's just, even when he screws up, it doesn't matter. Like, even when he is overhandling pucks or taking bad shots or whatever, it doesn't matter. Like, he just uses his footwork and his skating, or at least the mobility in his game, maybe not speed, but mobility, to chase down guys as soon as they get the puck and just turn it over in the offensive zone, flip it out in front again, try to create for his teammates or take a shot himself. Like, it just doesn't matter. So part of me kind of wishes he was back in the KHL or at least playing in the VHL more. But I mean, watching him rip up the MHL is, I guess, always a good time. I mean, I'll have Consta Helenius a lot lower on my board. I'll say that right now. People are probably going to scream at me both publicly and privately on where I have him.
Do you even watch games, Will?
Yeah, do you even watch games? Bro, you got to watch the games, bro. Data doesn't tell you everything, bro. Anyway, I don't care. I don't know. With Helenius, again, it's the risk. It's the he needs to come a ways to be at what he is in the NHL. And you don't want to draft a guy, in my opinion, in the top 10 where you're going, yeah, if this guy gets better at X, Y, Z, A, B, C, then he'll be fine. Or if you're looking at Constant Hellenius going, okay, but he's a smart puck mover and a really clever playmaker in Liga, but so he'll be fine in the NHL. It's like, well, the NHL is a completely different animal. It's just, if you can't skate, if you can't escape guys, if you can't use your body to protect the puck, then you're dead in the water. You're just not gonna drive a lot of play or get a lot of puck touches, or your role is going to be a lot more restrictive. And with Hellenius, I just see a lot of issues, and the data that I've tracked on him, a lot of it is really good, but some other areas I'm looking at it and going, yeah, I just don't know if this is a super, super high end guy. Like, he's in my first round, but top 10 or top 5, or some people have him top 3. Like, I just think that's a little much.
Having seen him a little bit at the World Juniors, and I've said this before, he just seems like the typical Finnish prospect that gets hyped every single year out of Finland. And I feel like it's a lot of Finnish people that are hyping this player because they watch Liga and see the player do well there. But
yeah,
Liga is very weird and different to the NHL. It is not a very intense league. There's a lot of perimeter play. There is the 5-man zone exit.
That was fun. I miss those days.
Which is crazy. The Laddie Pelicans, Brad Lambert 5-man zone exit. That was insane. I remember you showed me that photo. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so dumb. And that,
I don't know what's going on there.
This is the league we're talking about. And you see, like, we've seen guys come into the NHL out of Finland who are hyped immensely that end up not doing so well. Like, think about Capo Caco. Think about Jesse Puljujärvi. And it's not to say these guys are bad players. Yeah, Patrick Laine as well. Like, these guys aren't bad players. They just don't, like, they're not as good at an NHL level because Liga pace is way slower. Just way slower. I feel like the WHL is faster than Liga. Like, am I crazy at some level? Like,
no, I don't think so at all. Like, it's like the CHL is just very different from most European leagues already. Like, it's very north-south, but Liga is just sort of not. It's just, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but it's just very different. Like, players who may not do super well in that league sometimes leave that league and do really well. Some players play in that league and do extremely well and then go somewhere else and they're not as useful. So it's a strange place. And I'm not saying I've like cracked the code on him or Finnish players in general, but with him, he's an example of a guy that I have, doubts about. But I can't deny that in terms of hockey IQ and passing vision and all that stuff, he's very good at it. He's a very good thinker of the game. But I'll take Berkeley Catton, who's 2 spots behind him, 12 days of the week. I there's no question about it. But I mean, to me, the top 10 for Bob McKenzie is like, how many of these guys? 1, 2, 3. There's probably 5 or 6 guys in the top 10 where I'm going, you're hoping that a lot goes right with these guys. Like, they'll probably be players in some way, but you're putting a lot of faith into these guys over some other guys who I think show better projectable tools to play in the NHL effectively. And just some players that could just drive impact a little bit better at both ends. But it's just a strange year for the draft, to say the least. Moving down the board a little bit, I mean, Zeev Buium at 13, on one hand, I'm not surprised. Yes, I know his Byron Bader card probably looks sick. He's probably the next Brian Leach or Adam Fox. And you know what? There might be a little bit of that Adam Fox vibe to him, where when you watch Zeev Buium,
is it because he's Jewish, Will?
Come on, don't reduce me to that. But anyway, yeah, I mean, he's a guy who he's a guy who kind of plays that way where when you watch him, he's not like Quinn Hughes out there. He's not skating like the wind. He's not, rushing pucks all night and carving guys up and everything. He just plays a very smart, dependable game, working the offensive zone really, really effectively without, overstepping. Just has a really, really good grasp of how to play and how to be really, really effective. His defending, I think, is a work in progress, but I get the feeling that you leave him in college another season or two, and I think there's going to be a ton of things to gain from his game over the next couple of years. But I'm a huge fan of him. Adam Jiricek I'm not surprised again that he dropped a little bit. He's a guy who definitely was struggling in the Czech Pro League for large stretches of this season. But I mean, in my view, you can absolutely see the potential in his game when you watch him. He's a guy that I hope doesn't slip too far. As far as I know, his season is over. So what you've seen this year is what you're going to get. And what I've seen this year out of him was not great. But I saw him last year at the under 18s. I watched him a bit at the World Juniors. I think you get a good player there, just in terms of a defenseman who can just skate in all four directions and patrol the ice. I'd say him and Silayev are probably up there, but I might even give the edge to Jiricek. Granted, I haven't seen Jiricek in a while, but at the end of the day, I think he's right up there, and I hope he doesn't slip too far. But if he does, I think there's a lot of value to be had there. The name I did want to bring up in the next 10, I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions about other guys, but Beckett Seneke, I think, might have surprised quite a few people being at 19. And, if I'm putting on my NHL scout hat, I can see why. Seneke is a guy who I think he's barely outside of my first round right now. I think he's at 34 or something, 35. And I could easily see him being higher on my list because the first time I saw him this year, I kind of thought, he's fine. He's okay. He's not really doing a whole lot this game. But then, like, with a minute left in the game, his team was breaking the puck out of their own end, and he swung around from one side of the ice to the other, perfect pivot, carried all of his momentum, beautiful footwork, and there was a bad pass coming his way, and the way he caught it, cradled it, seamlessly managed to carry it up the ice and get it in the offensive zone. I think he dragged it around a guy or two and got himself a scoring chance. I was like, okay, that's something I didn't see all game long, so that's kind of fun. And then the next two games I did of him, it was the second one, I kind of went, okay, like, again, not a guy who I think is catching your eye all the time. He's not a guy who is jumping off the screen at you every night, but you watch him play, and I think he plays a really projectable sort of supplementary offensive role. Like, he's got some skill, he's a pretty good shooter, but his ability to just find guys around the ice and make plays in the middle of the ice and everything is really impressive. Like, he drives a lot of shot assists, a lot of passes to the slot from what I've found. And I think that that's an impressive player. I don't know if 19 is where I would take him, but I can see a role for him in the NHL. He's got some size, and if he's actually 175 pounds for someone who's 6'2", there's room for growth there. And I think for his style of play, being a bit chonkier might really help him. So I was pleasantly surprised to see him there, because he's a guy who I didn't have ranked until like maybe mid-December. And then I sort of saw him a couple more times, and I went, okay, there's more of that guy that I saw for 30 seconds of that first game that I watched. I mean, Aaron Kiviharju at 23, I don't know. With Kiviharju, I'll say this for me. He's really low on my board, but that's because he hasn't played. What I saw this season, in my view, wasn't great and showed a lot of issues. But there's also just a lot of players that I've seen this year that, based on what I saw out of Kiviharju last year and my thoughts about him coming into this year, I'd rather right now take the chance on these guys. Kiviharju, I think, is coming back next month. So he's going to play again. And I absolutely will be watching a ton of those games because I find him fascinating as a player. But, similar to a guy like Hellenius, a guy who doesn't get around the ice extremely well, in my view, or at least not well enough for a 5'9" defender to project to the NHL, but a very smart passer, sees the ice really, really well, has a great sense of deception and a great sense for misdirecting people. And if you like that kind of thing, great. But again, effectiveness is a different story. And his defending was not great. And I've said this a few times on the show, but as the years go by, I'm trusting defenders who can't really defend less and less and less and less in the context of the draft, because that's also a very difficult thing to learn how to do, especially for a 5'9" defenseman. Another name that people might be surprised about is Jet Lachenko, who came in at 26. Again, a guy who's similar to Beckett Seneke. I could see why Lachenko is ranked in the first round using my NHL draft hat. If you think like an Easton Cowan type player, where again the flash isn't there, the razzle dazzle, the skill level might not be kind of what you're looking for, but he's very young for this draft class, one of the younger OHLers in this draft that's going to be drafted likely, which is an advantage. He's really smart, just his sense of timing, his sense of spacing on breakouts, and the way that he sort of makes himself a good option a lot of the time, I think bodes really well for his future. Again, this is a guy who I think is in my top 50, but maybe not my first round. But again, this is why I do my draft ranking in tiers, because if someone sat with me at a scout table and four of them were like, we need Jet Lachenko in the late first round and we're not going to draft Miguel Marquez, I go, I see why. I get it. I can see why. So that's okay. Like, I'm not going to complain about it. And who knows, you might, based on where Miguel Marquez is in here, you might get him in the second round or third round, right? So, okay, like, sure, you don't need to push me around that much to do that. But again, just a smart player, and I think if you just sort of build on his talent profile and just make things better, I think you're going to get a really good player there. And, he's lower than Consta Hellenius on my board, but he plays with a more North American style of play that Hellenius has. So I really have liked Lachenko this season, the times I've seen him, and I've only really started watching him in the last 2 months, I'd say. But he's been interesting, and I'm surprised he's in the first round. Pleasantly surprised, I should say. Speaking of surprised he's in the first round, Tarek Parasak is there, which is fascinating to me. Cole Baudouin is another one that I was pleasantly surprised to see at 30. I actually did a game of his this morning, and he's just shot up my draft board over the course of the last month and a half. The first game I saw of him, he was kind of just more of a guy out there mucking it up, playing hard, physical player. He got in a fight and, skated really hard, but wasn't really doing much. But he really seems to be being given the puck a little bit more with Barry. He seems to be given a little bit more responsibility to run plays himself and quarterback play up the ice, because he looks like a really, really good, well-rounded player. He's physical, sure, but he's intense. He's not just a guy chasing hits all the time. He's more of a guy trying to cause turnovers. Again, he'll muck it up. He does do that. He's 6'1", 210 pounds, which is cool. But he doesn't look like he weighs 210 pounds out there. He's got some pace in his game. He scored an absolutely beautiful goal the game I watched today, slipping it through a goalie's 5-hole and on a rush by himself, basically, and he looked great doing it. So to see him in the first round, again, like, I'm not super surprised, and he's in a tier for me where if he was a late first round pick suggestion, I wouldn't say no immediately. And I could see him being a good NHL sort of energy player, in a mold of like you watch a Trent Frederick style of player, like those kinds of guys who are serviceable, dependable, may not score a tremendous amount, but definitely there. I love that Jesse Pulkkinen's at 33. And I mean, we could go down the list a little bit because there's a lot of guys who, again, my thing I say every year is if you're not drafting super, super high, trade down. Just trade down, no matter what. Just get as many picks as you can, especially in the first 2 rounds, especially in the second round. and just take swings. Like AJ, you were there. Think of how many times we fake drafted for the Arizona Coyotes when they had like 25 picks.
Oh yeah.
And the things that they could have landed with all of those picks that are just big swings, So that's always my approach, because when I look at the second round on Bob's list, I'm going, a lot of these guys very easily could be first round picks in my view. Michael Hage, who else? I've really liked Dominic Badinka as he's sort of played more and more in the SHL.
It just
Thomas
feels like
Galvis.
a lot of the time, safety is valued so highly.
Yeah.
Because people want to keep their jobs, which I understand. But when it comes to actually being able to go out and really take a swing on a guy, like Logan Stankoven was the second rounder.
Yep.
Look how
Maverick
good
Bourque was
he is.
almost a second rounder.
And Dallas got them late
Brad
first.
Lambert.
Yeah, Brad Lambert was at 30th. Teams just don't want to risk first-round picks. And they end up getting guys who are safer, guys who are going to play, but not necessarily play a huge role a lot of the times. And so the second round, I think, if you want to trade your first, but keep your second, because there's always good players. There's always good players in the second round.
Yeah, and the thing is,
who
too,
have you drafted in the second round with your own picks?
Nick Robertson was one.
He's
Let me
good.
pull it up. Sorry.
He's really good.
This one. That's what I want. Yeah, so that would be
or even the third round, like
Jonathan Dahlin, Rasmus Anderson.
Rasmus Anderson's a really good player.
Taylor Radish, Kalen Addison, Lane Hudson.
A really good player.
Daniel Guschin, Nick Robertson. Who else is in here?
Right, like
we don't need to talk about Simon Robertson. Jean-Luc Foudy is in here. He just came back from injury, but he has no points in 3 games, so he also sucks. Mikhail Burden was a guy I had at 68 in 2015, so just outside the second round.
Like, how satisfied are you with those picks?
Very.
And yeah, Sebastian
Adam Fox is another one.
Was a second round pick.
Yep, Adam Fox was a guy I took in the second round, 2016.
Was he a second? I think he was a third round pick.
Adam Fox was a third, but for me, running the show, he would have been my guy at 62 in 2016. But I think that year the Leafs took. They took. Was it Carl Grundstrom?
Oh, okay.
I think it might have been Carl Grundstrom.
I know.
Anyway, we don't.
Was in that draft though. I'm pretty sure
he was. I think he was their third round pick or something.
That makes sense.
Either way, one of I don't know, something like that.
But there's always good players in that range. Keep your second.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, there's a lot to sort of sink your teeth into on this. It is generally the best indicator of who's going to go where. And there's a lot to really sort of poke at. Like Teddy Stiga being ranked in the third round to me is insane. Same thing with Luke Misa. I think that's craziness. But, there are guys that when you watch them play, you go, yeah, they're 5'10", and they're fast. But I still don't understand, because those guys are some of the best forecheckers in the draft. The guys that, they're Gavin Brindley types, the guys who aren't big, but they play hard, they play fast, they have skill, they can finish. It's just people probably are worried that they'll bounce off guys that are 6'3" in the NHL, which, okay, but I'd rather try, with those types of players, I'd rather try than give up before they're drafted.
It just feels like a lot of the people who evaluate as well also value stuff that worked 10 years ago.
Right.
And
the
it's
NHL's
hard.
different.
It's hard. Like, the game has changed so much. There's such an emphasis on speed nowadays. Like, there really is. The guys are way faster. They're way more skilled. They got way better accuracy. The goalies are better. Like, everything is better in the NHL and at a higher and faster pace and level of intensity. So the thing is, you got to adjust for that. but I still look at these lists, and I don't have a great picture of everybody in this draft class. But what it sounds like to me, from what you're saying, Will, is that the old good players are being valued when the real good players are being missed.
Yeah, or at least
or
good
lower
bets.
valued.
Like,
Or valued
just-
lower, sorry.
yeah, it's just good bets. Like, the thing that I also wanted to mention, because you touched on it and I thought it was a good point, of like, teams want safety, right? They want, like, it seems like they don't want to lose their job.
Which
that
makes
kinda-
sense, right? Like,
Yeah, it
that's
makes
your
sense.
livelihood.
Yeah. But that leads directly into what I call the 7th round pick conundrum, where 7th round picks on average are more successful than like 4th, 5th, and 6th round picks. But that's because teams at the 7th round are probably just pointing at a scout who won't shut up about someone and going, who do you want? And they go, how about I don't know, who's the guy that went in the 7th round? Was it Andre Palat, who went to Tampa Bay? He was 20 and was like scoring a ton or something, and ended up becoming Andre Palat. I think it was him. But like, in the 7th round, teams are probably going to scouts individually or small pockets of their scouting team and going, all right, you were really, really high on this one guy, but we had him lower on our board because we're scared about him. So let's just pick him and see what happens. And it turns out that like, these guys work out more often than the guys you're drafting in the 4th, 5th, and 6th rounds because of safety, or you're drafting the 6'3" guy who had 7 points last year, hoping that he'll grow into his frame and get better at skating and get better at moving the puck and get better at this and this and this. And then if he does, then you've got yourself a 3rd pairing defenseman, which is a win, I guess. But in the 7th round, they have actually more success, which is, a trend that I believe is still there. Maybe less so now than it was in the past, but definitely still there. And that just goes to show, right? Like,
It might have been Platt because he's a 7th round pick
that would
in
be
2011.
Yep.
But he's 32 now. So how old would he have been in 2011? Take away 12
let's see.
years.
Palat was born
20.
in 1991. So yeah, he would have been 20. So yeah, that's the person I was thinking of. Nailed it. But yeah, I mean, looking at this list, I mean, I disagree with a lot of it. But I also think about things significantly differently from the average NHL scout who's probably interacting with Bob McKenzie. But that's perfectly fine. In any case, my own list will be dropping at the end of the week, and I'm sure it will go over extremely well with all of you and all of your friends and all of the people in the game and in the media who sometimes read what I do. But I think that about covers it for the Bob McKenzie draft ranking. There's lots of questions we can get to, but first of all, we wanted to bounce back to the NHL a little bit, and talk a little bit about the contenders that we talked about last week, and sort of leaning into sort of trade deadline season. When's the trade deadline again this year?
It's in March. Pretty sure.
It's in March. It's March 8th. So we're under 2 months away. It's about 6 weeks, it seems, before the NHL trade deadline. And as a quick refresher, the teams that both of us kind of agreed were teams that probably will be contenders were the Colorado Avalanche, Florida Panthers, Boston Bruins, Winnipeg Jets, the Vegas Golden Knights, Vancouver Canucks, the Edmonton Oilers, and AJ's more confident about this.
No. I'm not that confident. I just put them in so we can get a YouTube short out of it.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, we got to get the shorts money.
Exactly.
All 8 cents.
Yep, we got to get the shorts money.
Yeah, so the Toronto Maple Leafs are in here as well.
They're not contenders. So we can start. Don't worry, guys.
Yeah, it seems like they're going to do anything but try to contend this year, which is
kind of dumb.
Something. Anyway, so we can start with the Colorado Avalanche. I mean, they are a bit of a wagon, as the children say. My first instinct was a goaltender. I thought back to when the Kings went out and got Ben Bishop. What's better than having one number 1B goalie and a guy like Alexander Georgiev, who you're playing a ton, having two. And like a Jake Allen comes to mind, or Capo Kakkonen. Give him a ring. I've seen some people talk about John Gibson, but I do believe that Elliot Friedman mentioned that was probably not going to happen, and that I don't think Gibson wants to leave, but he has waffled on that in the past.
And the fact that his name is absent from every trade board that I've seen
He's
makes
he's
me...
on TSNs.
Oh, he is?
He is. He's on TSNs that was
How
posted.
low?
He was posted 2 weeks ago. He's sitting at 18.
Oh,
with
okay.
Jacob Markstrom. He's down there with Jacob Markstrom. Peter Mrazek is down there, but I don't think I'd go out and get him. But yeah, I think that's the first thing I pointed out. AJ, what did you throw out there for the Avalanche?
2C. Go get Elias Lindholm. Like, that's
okay.
And he's better than a 2C. Like, he's kind of in that very good 2C to 1C conversation. Like, I just think that they need some more forward depth. Like, the hole that Nazem Kadri left and so Gabriel Landeskog being hurt has affected that team. And they just haven't been able to put together a roster as talented as the team that won the Cup in 22. Like, honestly, I picked the Colorado Avalanche to win the Stanley Cup the year before as well. And I figured that it would probably be Tampa, Colorado, even in 2020. Like, that was my finals. And I had that finals 3 straight years. Because those two teams were clearly the best 2 teams in the NHL at the time. And I felt like Colorado was the better of those 2 teams.
Yep.
Except for in 2020. But after that, I was always Colorado first.
Right.
I think they still have it. They just need to get one more top 6 forward, and if you can come away with Elias Lindholm on that team, oh, good God, they're going to be very scary.
Yeah, and I mean, that gives you a 1-2-3 punch up the middle of Nathan McKinnon, Ryan Johansson, Elias Lindholm, and Ross Colton, which is pretty good.
That's really solid.
Pretty good. Yeah, that's a pretty good set of players up the middle. Maybe they go out and maybe add another bit of scoring that might come cheap.
Like an Anthony
a guy
Duclair,
like I was going to say Anthony Duclair, Patrick Maroon.
No,
a beacon of offense in Patrick Maroon. There's a lot of guys making some decent money on this trade list for TSN. So that's always a tricky bit of trade deadline stuff. But Sean Monahan is just under $2 million, and he's number 4 on this list.
And Montreal and Colorado like to do a lot of business with each other. So it wouldn't be surprising to me at all if Colorado ends up with Sean Monahan, like Jake Allen, maybe miss out on Elias Lindholm. But they could honestly come away with all 3.
Or there could be someone completely out of left field that we're not even thinking about, because that always happens on trade day. Yeah, Andrei Kuzmenko. I don't think they have any Russians on that team, do they? The Colorado Avalanche? Do they? They've got. I'm looking at their cap friendly right now. Right? Well, he's gone.
Yeah, but
that's
he's
one.
Russian.
Sure, but yeah, there's one. Georgiev
comes back then.
Georgiev is from Russia, but I think he's Bulgarian.
He's Bulgarian.
Yeah, he's a Russian national from Bulgaria. There you go. But anyway, I think for Colorado that makes sense. Just like some forward depth, because their top 4 defensemen are bonkers.
It's ridikious how good they are.
And I would think some goaltending depth. Yeah.
Yep.
Like when you've got Makar, Girard, Manson, Taves. Is Bowen Byram coming back anytime soon? I hope so, because that also adds to that.
But they also have Sam Girard, who's a very talented player that just hasn't necessarily been as good as he could be. But he's
Devon
awesome.
Taves is still $4.1 million against the cap this season.
He rocks. He is so good, man.
So just for you, the Colorado Avalanche will have Cale Makar. Well, they do right now have Cale Makar and Devon Taves for less money than Austin Matthews. So that's pretty fun. And then next year, Devon Taves jumps up to $7.25. So that changes things a little bit. But him and Cale Makar for $16.25 million. I'll take it. Who was next on our list? I still have our notes up. Florida Panthers. Well, you can take this away because you seem to believe in the Panthers a little bit more than I do, but I do think that they could be a good contender.
You don't believe in the Panthers?
I mean, I do, but from our discussions, it seems like you're right in there with them.
Oh, I think Colorado, Florida is the final. if you put a gun to my head and said, "Hey AJ, if you get this wrong, I'm going to murder you," I would pick these two teams. And then I'd probably get killed afterwards because the NHL's so random.
And usually you're wrong when you predict who's going to be in the Stanley Cup final. Not you. I mean, the royal you. Everybody is wrong. Doing a bracket, I'm sure we'll do some kind of a bracket challenge towards the end of the year, but mine are always terrible. I don't know about you, but mine are always terrible.
But I really think that like they could honestly go back and get Duclair. That could be an option. They might go out and get some more depth on the blue line too. Like they're just a team that can shore up a little bit. But I feel like they're just really, really good all the way through for the most part.
Yeah, they are that's the thing. Like they're kind of like Vegas in a way where they have a couple of guys that can really give you not a literal punch in the nose. They have that too, but like a scoring based punch in the nose. Yeah. But they're just deep, like up and down their lineup. There isn't that much of a weak point. I would think like defensive depth might be on the list. Maybe someone cost controlled that they have for a couple of years because 4 of their defensemen are unrestricted free agents this year. And you're not going to keep Brandon Montour for $3.5 million this season. You know, I've got David Phillips in the chat again talking about the best backup goaltender in the league right now, and Anthony Stolarz. So, yeah, I think the Panthers. I mean, for me, it's probably defense depth a little bit, and like another guy who can score might really benefit them.
They
like
might
they've
just
got
bring
Barkov.
Back Duclair.
That's true. They might bring back Anthony Duclair. You know.
The answer to a lot of these questions, like a lot of these teams, is Anthony Duclair, Elias Lindholm, Sean Walker.
Right.
Like those are a lot of the. It's going to be a lot of the same answers because those are the best of the bunch. Maybe Chris Tanev, but like not for Florida. They play too fast for Chris Tanev. Yep.
Like Florida, the name that popped up that I thought was kind of neat was Florida maybe going out and getting a Jacob Chikrin, but I doubt the Ottawa Panthers or Ottawa Senators
trying to relocate them. Will
relocating them to with the same name. Wow, I'm confused. I confused myself. But anyway, no, I lost my train of thought.
Chikrin, I think, is a Florida boy actually. Like I think he
is, but I just doubt that Ottawa would deal him within the division. Like I don't know if they would. Because he does have term on his deal, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, but it's until 2025. It's not that much longer.
Who knows? But
so it's this season.
That's just the name that popped up.
Right?
Yeah. Yep. But I don't even know if they could afford it. I think it says that their cap space right now is like $2 million, and that's not going to be easy to maneuver under.
Find ways. You always
find a way.
Ways.
Yeah,
but
you find a way.
That would be like the one move they might make, especially because, as you said, like they don't have a ton of their blue liners signed going into next year. So getting a guy like Jacob Chikrin, who's a local product, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, he is.
Would be huge for them.
Yeah. Next up, we have the Boston Bruins. You just wrote Elias Lindholm.
Yep.
That's pretty common, just going down the list.
Yeah, there's a lot of those where it just says Elias Lindholm.
Yep. It's good note taking, if you got a formula that works, copy paste.
But I think the Bruins could really use another center.
100%. Yep.
Especially since the hole that's been left from Bergeron and Krejci, but especially Bergeron. And that team still rocks. They are well and ahead, the top team in the Atlantic in terms of points. I don't necessarily know that they're going to be like, I don't trust that to necessarily be they're the best team in the Atlantic, even if they do finish with the best record.
Yep.
Because they're well ahead of Florida, 7 points ahead of them, with the same amount of games played at 45. But they could really use another center, and Elias Lindholm would be fantastic for them. It's just, you got to make the money work somehow.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, there's not a ton of centers available, the TSN board has Lindholm, Monahan, and Adam Henrique.
And Adam Henrique's decent, but he's not.
Yeah, you can't put
Elias
him
Lindholm.
Yeah. I mean, I think any of those guys would be a boost for sure. Are you really going to be throwing Morgan Geekie out there, right, as your center in the playoffs? You could, but I would think Sean Monahan or Adam Henrique or especially Elias Lindholm might be a little bit better for your depth, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and I don't think they need to make. I don't think they need to make any move on the blue line, and
No,
their
I don't think
goaltending's
so either.
really good.
Yes.
So just getting a center, like that's all they need to focus on. And if they can get Lindholm, they might even have to do it where it's double retained, but it's worth it for that team.
Yeah, and they've got the parts to do it. You know, they got a first-round pick next year, unless they absolutely fall apart this year and catastrophically fall to the top 10 in the draft.
And they have Fabian Lysell.
Yep, they've got Fabian Lysell, who, if you're dealing with, I don't know if he would make a good Calgary Flame, but you never know. They got a first-round pick in 2026. They got all their picks in 2026. So who knows? You might be looking at a Jake McCabe-esque trade for a guy like Elias Lindholm, and maybe they'd be able to keep him. You know, who knows? But I agree. I think that's kind of the big glaring thing. Maybe another sort of firepower guy to have on your lineup, like down the lineup, just a guy who can put the puck in the net. You know, if you can get, I mean, Andrei Kuzmenko comes to mind, but I don't know if he'd be a good fit in Buffalo or in Boston. Jake Gensel, maybe you could get, maybe Kyle Dubas gets a ton for Jake Gensel by double retaining him through another team, and you get Jake Gensel for, what is it? That'd be $1.5 million.
And then he goes back to Pittsburgh.
Exactly. But, you know, Kyle Dubas moved guys through other teams to double retain many, many times.
Nick Foligno.
Yep. We don't need to talk about that. But yeah, I think there's other names out there that could be had that I think could add some more punch. You know, Tyler Johnson's out there. You know, just a little bit of an extra thing for the Boston Bruins down their lineup.
Yeah, like what about a Vlad Tarasenko if they don't find a center?
Yep. You could, yeah, I mean, you could just load up your wingers and just keep shooting, just keep firing away.
Wouldn't
and
be my
try
first
to beat
choice, but
no,
I think it's also an option.
Yeah, it is. The Winnipeg Jets, again, very similar to Colorado, it seems. They just need some depth and more up the middle. Like, it could be a hell of a deal for Elias Lindholm and then probably a hell of a deal for Sean Monahan, especially because Monahan makes less than $2 million.
Yeah, like Monahan could be good there, potentially.
Yeah, I would say Monahan in Winnipeg would be a good fit, you know, especially if you're getting him for less than $1 million on the cap. And Winnipeg definitely has the pieces to make a deal like that happen. I believe, yeah, they acquired one of Montreal's picks. They've traded with Montreal recently, the Christian Dvorak. Oh, no, that's not the Christian Dvorak trade. That was through the Arizona Coyotes. But anyway, the Winnipeg Jets have a ton of draft picks, relatively speaking. They've got a ton of prospects that they could throw in a package for a Sean Monahan. But who knows? I think that's a probably a good fit. And then, yeah, I mean, just a little bit of depth. They just need more stuff down. You know, if the Winnipeg Jets sent a 5th round pick for a guy who can put the puck in the net, like one of those trades, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, they don't really have to do much, honestly. Like they could stand pat and be completely fine. There's no real glaring weakness with that team.
Yeah. God, that Pierre-Luc Dubois trade, man. Goodness gracious.
Yeah, they've set themselves up for success with that.
Yep. Which is crazy.
And robbed the LA Kings in the process. They turned Patrick Laine into that.
Oh boy. So yeah, that I guess that quickly covers the Winnipeg Jets. The Vegas Golden Knights, again, in our notes, we've got Elias Lindholm. I mean, the Vegas Golden Knights love to go hunting. They've got 3 first-round picks between 24 and 26. They could go hunting. They
spend them all.
Yeah, they've got cap space, millions of dollars in cap space right now. Tons of money on injured reserve just sitting there.
And they can sit Mark Stone out for the rest of the season whenever they feel like it, just to rest him, because he does have injury concern. Like he's not going to play a full 82 anyways.
Mm-hmm.
They can just put him on LTIR with like 20, like right before the deadline, and they can just do that.
I'm going to show my ignorance here and say, what the hell is happening with Vegas's goaltending right now on Cap Friendly? They're listed as having Logan Thompson, Isaiah Seville, and Yuri Patera up with the team right now. Aiden Hill is on injured reserve. Oh, I guess, yeah, Robin Leonard obviously on injured reserve, but I guess Thompson has been their backup all season, or Aiden Hill and him have been splitting
Yeah,
it.
it's basically a 1A, 1B where Hill is more the guy.
Yeah.
But slightly more.
Right. I mean, a guy like an Anthony Duclair, again, I think could be a good Vegas Golden Knight because they do have a lot of big, heavy skill guys, but I'd rather have a guy like that on the roster than maybe Paul Cotter, who's been solid, but more punch would help because I think that they have a really good core that they can work around. But I think their defense, like Winnipeg, is pretty solid as is. Like if they stand pat, I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, I think just a little bit more depth, whether it's Elias Lindholm or not, could be certainly very helpful. And then we've got 3 teams all with the same word next to them in Vancouver, Edmonton, and Toronto. And you can say that word. I'll give you the right to say it because it's a good one. Exactly. All of those teams certainly could use some more assistance on the defensive side of the puck. AJ, where do you want to start? What do you want to cross off the list first of these 3 teams?
Your second favorite team, the Vancouver Canucks. Next to your absolute favorite team, the Ottawa Senators. But we're not going to talk about
the Edmonton Oilers.
No.
Yeah. Go Sens, go.
Yeah, Will's had some run-ins with Sens fans, and more recently, Canucks fans, calling him dumb.
And who's turned out right with the Ottawa Senators fans? Who's turned out more correct than anyone? Probably me. But anyway, we don't need to talk about that. I love you, Sens fans, and I love Ottawa. I'm one of the few Canadians, I think, who gives credit to Ottawa as a city.
Yeah, that's true.
In Canada.
I don't think anybody else does.
I kind of like Ottawa.
My brother literally said to me today, Ottawa is such a boring place. And this is just completely out of context. It's just so funny that you mentioned that you like Ottawa so much and you like the city. And earlier today, my brother just said, yeah, Ottawa's such a boring place.
But you're a Canadian. I'm a Canadian. Outside of Toronto, Montreal, and I don't know enough about Vancouver. I've only been there a couple of times. Canada is boring as a whole. Halifax is neat and it's relaxing. I think St. John's is a cool, quiet little town. Well, city, I should say, small city. But generally speaking, Canada is a little boring, and Ottawa, certainly it's a government town. It's not, it's not bumping, but it's nice. It's a nice city. I've always kind of enjoyed being there. But yeah, if you're looking for Vegas, it's not Ottawa for sure. But anyway, we're getting sidetracked here.
Yes, we are.
You mentioned the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah. So Vancouver to me is just crazy. I can't believe that they're actually in on Jay Gensel, or at least that's a thing. I mean, I should be able to believe it because Patrick Alvin and Jim Rutherford have had him before. But they don't need Jake Gensel. That's the furthest thing from what they need right now. I watched that Leafs-Canucks game. I know the Leafs lost, but Vancouver was not good, especially defensively. The first period, they were awesome. They really were. But then they just kind of collapsed and really relied on a power play and Thatcher Demko to carry them to a victory, which can work, but you need guys who can defend. And Tyler
I thought
Myers
Nikita Zadorov was going to fix all their problems.
No.
All that talk about Nikita Zadorov.
No. He was good, and he completely bulldozed guys.
Yeah, he does what he does.
Dude, my dad was watching that game, and he's like, what the hell is that? Right? I just don't think that... I just look at the way the Canucks are right now, and truthfully, Kuzmenko should work. It just blows my mind that Kuzmenko doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure he could work somewhere else.
That should be the top 6 option that helps. But if it doesn't, an Anthony Duclair is more the style that they should go for. But a Sean Walker in Vancouver would be awesome.
Yep.
I think.
I think Sean Walker's a good one to bring up because his name's back out there.
Yeah, go for it.
I was just going to say, you mentioned Kuzmenko, and I mean, again, I don't know how much truth there is to how much they want to get rid of him. I mean, it's not a good look when they're scratching him and he has a modified no trade clause in his contract. But I mean, maybe that's a guy that they shuttle out and then bring in a guy like Jake Gensel in a separate deal and maybe add a couple of pieces down the lineup. Because, like I highlighted it at the top of the show, like the issue for them is like in the last 2 months, they're getting outshot, but the reason they're getting outshot is actually fewest shots for. Only 3 teams have shot the puck on and hit the net fewer times than Vancouver in the last 2 months. Like their top line is on fire. They are ripping,
Yeah.
but they're still not getting pucks on net as much as the vast majority of teams in the league. So is sitting Andrei Kuzmenko going to change that? I don't think so. But, you know, I think
They
that
also
there's
kind of
room.
get hemmed in too, at least from what I've seen.
Sure. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, yeah, they're getting outshot pretty much most games, it seems, at least on paper. I'm not saying they're bad. Let's take it easy. But yeah, we got Raybro in the comments saying take Cody Ceci. Trust me, he's good. Yeah, I mean, sure, that's an option.
No,
yeah,
it's
and
not.
I'm sure
It's a non-option.
no, Ken Holland would never trade Cody Ceci.
Or Vinny Desharnais.
There's no way. Yep.
Because the Leafs
Another name I
asked,
saw,
and they didn't do it, which is thank God.
Well, Vincent Desharnais this year actually has been a solid defensive player, but the offense is so awful that it just does not matter. Like as soon as he touches the puck, he's a non-option. But if he doesn't have the puck, he can do stuff. So that's a thing. It's kind of cool, I guess.
And I just like I honestly feel like we can just sum up the 3 Canadian teams together.
Yeah.
Sean Walker is the answer, I think, for all 3 of these teams. And
Yep.
sure, maybe you want to get a top 6 forward. If you're really concerned about it for Vancouver, and I know David Phillips has mentioned that he's taken the over on how many times I've said Anthony Duclair, but it's because he's good and cheap. He's good and cheap.
Yep.
There's a lot of value in good and cheap players. Look what Brandon Hagel got.
Yep.
Right? Like, and I don't think that I really doubt that anybody's going to ask for nearly that much with Anthony Duclair. Like, I doubt the Sharks are like, oh, you're going to give us 2 first-round picks.
Yeah. No, I know. I think
He might even go
Sean
for
Walker's
a third. I'd be surprised if that happens.
I think Sean Walker's an interesting one. I mean, Ilya Lyubushkin back in Toronto would be kind of funny because I enjoyed watching him play.
Chris Tanev to the Canucks again would be good.
Yeah, Chris Tanev to the Canucks would be good. Nick Seeler is apparently out there too. He's decent. He's at least a decent defensive player, and he's also under $1 million on the cap.
Yeah, I think he's league min, actually.
Yeah, he is. Yep, exactly. So there's options. You know, but I mean, in Toronto's case, it doesn't seem like they want to move anything to get anybody. Take that for what you will. But I mean, Vancouver very clearly, they think they can do it. They think they can go for it. And at least when you look under the hood, the Edmonton Oilers are one of the better teams in the National Hockey League, and their win record recently shows that. You know, being with their record under Chris Knobloch. But it was funny. I also took a look at Edmonton's data before and after the firing, and literally every metric you could possibly care about that wasn't save percentage was identical. They're still a possession monster team. They're still getting chances. It's almost identical across the board. If Chris Knobloch did anything, it was nothing, right? And it works.
What happened? They've become way better at defending on the rush. That's their rush defense is what's really improved. And it's allowed Stu Skinner to get better save percentage because of the rush
that's
defense.
the big change.
That's the big change.
Yeah, that's the big change. Like
But
his
beyond
save
that,
percentage
they've
has
done
gone
nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Which, hey, sometimes doing nothing is the best solution to doing something or finding something to do.
Because I feel like Jay Woodcroft had a good foundation in place, just something needed to be tweaked, and it was.
Yep.
And
exactly.
Chris Knobloch is a good, if we want to say, is a good coach for being able to just find the one problem and fix it. I'm happy to give him the credit for addressing the problem and dealing with it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's worked out.
Yeah.
I just think for all 3 of these Canadian teams that we mentioned, that a guy like Sean Walker, who is a mobile, more modern defense guy, would be really, really good. And if you can sign him to an extension, I think that would be awesome. Chris Tanev back to Vancouver could also be a cool thing, or Chris Tanev to the Oilers could be interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be the Leafs now. I think they're not going to go for the big money, big name stuff. But a guy like Sean Walker in Toronto would also be really good because the wheels have fallen off on TJ Brody and Mark Giordano.
Oh God, have they ever? Holy.
And that's honestly, I think the biggest problem with the team is that those two guys aren't good anymore. Like Gio was in a limited role before, but Brody's fall off has been really the big catalyst to why this team has not performed as well as they have.
Yeah.
So if they could replace TJ Brody with a guy like Sean Walker and then work from there going into next year, that would be kind of the direction.
Yeah. So we can move over to the questions for this show, get through them relatively quickly. But before we do, I'm going to do an ad read and also summarize the players that I watched since last Monday night. So we are brought to you by Fanatics. You can use our affiliate link below or scan the QR code in the description or in the video window. And anything you buy in the store provides a small kickback to the show, so it helps us pay our bills, and we love that. Puck Preps is also sponsoring the show, where you can get all of your NCAA prospect needs and CHL entry draft needs, both Quebec, Western League, and in Ontario, or I should say Quebec and the Maritimes now. We're also brought to you by Fractal Hockey Consulting, which is my business for hand-tracked targeted player analysis and recruitment packages. So if you're an organization looking for some help on both the hockey side and the business side, check us out at fractalhockey.com. And of course, Scouching.ca. So you can subscribe at Scouching.ca, get exclusive access to innovative data tools. You will see my rankings before everybody else. You'll see any other blog posts generally before everybody else. We've got a really fun Discord server that is growing slowly over the weeks. Would love to have you added to it. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
We're there a lot, and we love watching hockey and love interacting with you, so please come.
Play some board games in there once in a while, watching hockey together. It's a good old time. And I do want to say for Scouching subscribers also, there will be exclusive shows in there of some kind. I do want to do that, but I have got to plan all that out. But I do want to make that a part of the show. Some exclusive content just for you. So this past week, I'm going to just run through these guys real quick. And let you know which direction they went on the list. So I started with Zeev Buium. He moved down a bit. Henry Muse moved up, but then I ended up moving him back down. Luke Osborne, I moved him up a bit. Stein Solberg, I put him on the list after neglecting him for a few months. Oscar Vuillet, I put him on the list as well, but pretty low. Will Scan, I moved him up a few slots. Fyodor Avramov in Russia, moved him up a few slots. Max Curran, I took him off, but I believe I put him back on later in the week. This is how it goes with me. I took a look at Atos Koivu, son of Saku Koivu. I was about to call him Samu, like Shamu the whale, but that's not his name. Atos Koivu, and he went on the list. I was a fan of his game that I saw. Kuzma Voronin, I moved him down a bit, but I still like him quite a bit. Leon Mugli, I put him on the list. Marek Vanacker is on the list now. Christopher Thibodeau moved down a couple of spots. Igor Surin stayed off the list. Tanner Howe moved down. Charlie Ellick and Jacob Battaglia also moved down. And then I closed with Adam Yeko, Dominic Badinka, Linus Eriksson, Cole Baudouin, and Sam O'Reilly, who moved up the list a little. And then Adam Kleber and Maxime Massé, who moved down the list themselves. So that's it. So let's get to the questions. Obviously, and Brian Stewart jumping in right away with Silai season, baby. I'm going to assume that means Anton Silayev. And yes, it's going to be silly season. Silai season for sure in Vegas. I can't wait. The more and more I hear and read about what the inside of this draft world is thinking, the more and more excited I get about the draft. And that goes for pretty much every year. But this year is going to be awesome. I think this year's going to be crazy, and I can't wait. Do you think Sam? Do you think Hellenius slips over the next few months compared to Bob's rankings? Probably not. As long as he keeps scoring, I don't think people are going to take him off the list. I think he is eligible for the under 18s, if I'm not mistaken. He is. He's a May baby. He's a maybe. And I think he'll probably score a ton of points there, which, cool. Go nuts. They'll, do the thing. But I don't think he's going to slip. I just will have him ranked lower. He'll probably score a bunch of points, and we'll see in 6 years, and we'll have to see where I'm at on him, because I have a hot take on him. What are your thoughts on Matvei Shuravin and Daniil Ustinkov? So I like Ustinkov a bit more. I think he's more of a sort of creative, shifty guy with the puck on his stick. But Shuravin certainly is no slouch. He's big, pretty rangy, pretty quick in a straight line. Really good, sort of stable defender. Nothing fancy, but just gets the job done. And I can see why he's in the first round, but I think he'll be drafted earlier than I would take him. Whereas Ustinkov, you're getting an also very interesting player, just probably 2 or 3 rounds later, and I'll take it. Matatron, any thoughts on the All-American games? So full disclosure there, I had to miss it the day of the game. If anybody has any tips, I have no idea where to find it. I subscribed to 2 separate streaming services on a free trial because I Googled it and it said that it had it. They did not. Neither of them had like what's it called? Like what's it called? Like none of them had it archived to watch later. None of the video platforms I use for other games, it's not on there either. All that the NHL Network had was just a video recapping James Hagen's play in the game, so I guess he was good. So yeah, I do not have thoughts because I have not seen it and I have not found a way to see it. So if anyone knows, please let me know. Do you think it's harder to identify if a defenseman plays with pace than a forward? I don't think so, because you're looking for me at least, you're looking for different stuff. Like pace to me in a defenseman is, how quickly are they thinking and what are they doing after they think, right? Like a guy who I really love, who is nowhere to be seen on anyone else's list, Marcus Kiersey in Quebec. He plays in the Maritimes for Charlottetown on the island, on the island. He plays with pace in his own way. He's quick with his hands, quick with his brain, and pretty smart. And so, I'm not really looking for defensemen that can just get up the ice really quickly and make plays on the rush. That's not really a priority for me as much. It's nice to have. But for me, it's a lot of, can I trust this guy to think quickly, move the puck quickly, and all that stuff. So it is a little bit different. But I don't know. I don't really find it more difficult because you can certainly tell a defenseman who plays at low pace when you see one, for sure. Why are experts not having Catton in the top 5? Are there any issues with his game that, in your opinion, makes him a bad or risky pick? What's good about Catton? Yeah, he's 5'11" and a little slight, and he's not, I would say, not an elite speedy boy or an elite skill guy, but I don't really care because what he does have, he uses unbelievably well. And I think he's just going to get better and better and better the more talented he becomes. Like the more he works on the fundamentals, then I think he's just going to get like better and better and better because his brain is like next level. The way he sees the ice, the way he makes plays, the way he spots line mates. I've seen him so many times stop up. He enters the offensive zone and sort of changes his pace a little bit, changes his speed a little bit, lets other players catch up, and he'll throw the puck into open ice and there's nobody there. But then next thing you know, he just placed it perfectly for someone who was trailing the rush and generates a scoring chance that way. Like those kinds of things you don't see a ton. That ability to have vision, not just outside the offensive zone or just a sense of timing that way is really, really impressive. So, I mean, I love Catton. He's right up at the top of my board, and he'll stay there for the rest of the year because he is sick. Thoughts on Oscar Vuolet? So yeah, I've seen him at the junior level this year and did not think he was particularly good unless he was shooting the puck. I watched him in the SHL a couple of times, and I think there's a little more to him. I think he moves, he plays hard, he pushes pace pretty well. He was better off the puck than on it from what I saw, but he was better than I remember early in the year. So he's a guy that I put on the list, not super high, but I will be circling back on him before the end of the year. Who's your top defenseman in the draft right now, and why is it Zeev Buium? Yes, it is right now, as of this moment, it is Zeev Buium, but I'm going to double check. No, it is not, actually. I changed it. I forgot about that. I moved Adam Jiricek back ahead of him, which I may regret. But for me, with Adam Jiricek, I see a guy who is significantly younger. Zeev Buium is an 05, Jiricek is an 06, but also a guy who I think is more mobile, a guy who covers more ice more easily, a guy who is a better defender, more fundamentally sound defender, but, Zeev Buium's pretty good at it too. And a guy who may not have the offensive output, but if he just gets more experience, works on connecting on more passes and just staying a little more calm, especially when the puck's on his stick, then I think you could have a really, really good defense first guy who has a bit of offensive pop as well. But, Zeev Buium's the next guy on the board and he's in the same tier, but I just feel like with Jiricek, the footwork and the mobility is just really, really good. Whereas Zeev Buium's a little bit more behind him. What do you think about Tarek Parasak? Seems to be having a pretty good rookie year in the WHL. Yeah, if Tarek Parasak were on most other WHL teams, I don't think he'd be scoring like he is. I've tracked 3 games of him. I've watched 2 other ones, and I just do not see a player where I would draft him anywhere, I don't think. I might live to regret that. He might be this Joshua Waugh, Jordan Dumais, whoever you want to call it, guy who doesn't look super impressive, but just keeps scoring points, which cool, but I don't get it. It's one of those things where if it happens, I don't understand it, and I'm just going to move on with my life. Look, he's a smart player with regards to his spacing, and he gets himself into open space pretty well, and he gets shots off pretty quick, and he can sort of deflect from a shot to a pass in the goal mouth pretty easily to set up tap-ins. But that to me is just not projectable, really. He's a low-pace guy, not super involved defensively, not super involved outside the offensive zone much at all from what I've seen. And he plays on a team that, like, I've got Andre Becker ranked because Becker's a guy who I think has Tarek Parasak's bills paid. Like, he's a guy who moves a lot of that bus for a guy like Parasak. He's just been a remarkable player for Prince George this year. And he was great at the World Juniors, so he's a guy that I have ranked, and I don't have Parasak ranked. What are my thoughts on Igor Chernyshev? He's a little bit of a clunky boy on his feet, but the skill level is there. The creativity is really there. A really interesting player. I think he's got, he's a guy who I think plays with enough pace in his game and thinks quickly to make it work. He's looked pretty good in the KHL when I've seen him there. Some of the skill moves he makes are really, really good. But I'm a little more limited on him than a lot of people. I think he's in my first round for sure. But I just wonder how much of his offense projects to the NHL. And if he doesn't have offense in his game, there's not a whole lot going on there. But he's a lot of fun to watch, very skilled, very creative. And again, a guy who, similar to like a Beckett Seneke, when you're not really paying that much attention, all of a sudden he does something that grabs your attention, which is always kind of fun. Who are the most glaring omissions from Bob's top 80 and 20 honorable mentions? So I don't have the honorable mentions in front of me. Oh, actually, now I do. I just got them. So let me just check, because I'll just filter for guys that I have ranked that he doesn't, if I can find the right tab. So just going to my ranking tracker, open you up. This is a complicated process, Brian, that you got me going on here. Let's see, my ranks, sort by that. McKenzie, and sort by that. So the best players that I have ranked that he does not are Topias Heinonen from Finland, a teammate of Konsta Helenius, who I've really liked, but is a long-term project. Danilo Stinkov, but he was an honorable mention. Marcus Kiersey is on there. Noel Franzen is there. I like Clark Caswell quite a bit. He's in my top 40. He wasn't on that list at all, I don't think, unless he was an honorable mention. He was not. That really surprises me, especially when Jet Luchenko is a first rounder. I don't know why you would leave Clark Caswell completely off the board. Jaeger Graf is a Russian guy who I've really, really liked, and he was off the board. Fyodor Avramov and Herman Truff are two guys that I have ranked in the top 50 who were not on that list. I've got Yuri Tiacek ranked again this year, of course, because he's been bonkers this year, and I've always held strong that he's good. Adam Kleber and Luke Osborne are two other guys in the top 60 that I have ranked, and they weren't on there. And then Kuzma Voronin at 62 is a guy right now at 62, I should say, who I've really loved watch play. I love to watch him play. Just a ton of fun, and he's going to be drafted probably, really late. But if you want to bet on skill and bet on a guy who's just a ton of fun to watch, AJ, I feel like you would like him. You can poke around on him because he's also a guy, you look at a Kenta Issa guy 2 years ago, he wasn't scoring a ton for Youngstown, but you could see the skill, you could see the intensity level. And with Voronin, I see very similar things there with him. Just, I would argue that his skill level is higher than what I was seeing out of Issa guy at the same time. And the pace of his game is also crazy good. So those are some names I'd throw out there. Christopher Thibodeau and is another one I probably would throw out there as well. What's next? What do we got here? Trevor Connolly at 11 is something someone highlighted. That's true. It's high, but I have really, really liked Trevor Connolly this year as well. Just a really, really good skill first guy who has a lot of power in his game. Not a great supporting cast around him, but he tries to cook as much as he can. And I've liked him. I've liked him quite a bit when I've seen him. And he's not that high on my list, but he is not far off. Thoughts on the AJHL, BCHL situation, and do you think those leagues can compete with the USHL in the future? Now, this is an interesting question that I totally forgot about. That is a thing that's happening, but fascinates me. I spoke to my better half last night about this because she saw I think on TikTok someone talking about this. So if you're not aware, the BCHL, I believe before last season, left Hockey Canada's umbrella. They voluntarily basically told Hockey Canada they want nothing to do with them anymore and went independent. So the BCHL basically sets their own rules, right? There's no political structure to the BCHL anymore. So they can recruit from across the country. They can recruit from Europe. They can basically make themselves a better league outside the confines of what Hockey Canada puts on their provincial junior leagues. What they also did is 5 AJHL teams announced that they were going to join the BCHL next year. And in retaliation, the AJHL has suspended those teams' games without any note of when that was going to start up again. So they're getting retribution halfway through the season for announcing that they're leaving the league next season to go to a situation they think is better. Now, the AJHL is bad. It's not a good league, really, especially for prospect development, in my opinion. There are some teams there that win pretty much every game. The Brooks Bandits, I believe, have lost like 5 games this year. And I think they're like, they score. I've seen games where they score like 12 goals, 10 goals, 9 goals. And there's a few teams like that. And most of those teams are the ones who announced that they were leaving the AJHL. So you can see why they would want to do that. They're next door to BC, so the travel's not that much worse. And it's a more competitive league. Objectively, it's just more competitive. So I get it. And I get the feeling that the BCHL is going to, like, my read of the situation is the BCHL has kind of forced something very uncomfortable but very necessary onto Hockey Canada. And it's something that we talk about here all the time. And it's like, we have to change the structure of the league hierarchy in this country to better suit developing really high-end elite players. Like, it's fine as is, but especially for college preparatory type players, like, that needs to be a more attractive option. And most of these leagues are not competitive, really, relative to other junior leagues or relative to each other. But the BCHL is out there going, no, we're going to change that. You know, like, if you're from Ontario, the Penticton Vs can pick you up if you want to come. If you want to come to Penticton and play for a good program instead of the Leamington Flyers, pack your bags. Let's go. Party on. Let's go. And the McPherson twins did that last year. So it's just a thing that kind of needs to happen. Unfortunately, the AJHL is seeing this through the lens of retribution, and the receiving end of that is the players, and that really sucks because, like, I mean, I said the AJHL is not a great league, and I stand by that, but it's still full of passionate hockey players who want to follow their careers as far as they can go. A lot of them could go to college. A lot of them could go to, say, U Sports or who knows where, right? There's a number of places you could go. And so for me, I feel bad for those kids. It sucks. I never will understand two things: why they announced this midseason. I don't know why they would do that when they could just do it the day after their seasons end. I don't know why you didn't. I don't get it. And I also just am disappointed but not surprised that instead of saying maybe we should reflect on this and sort of think about ways to get around this, immediately the reflex is punishing the players who are on the teams that decided to do this by banning the teams from competing for a few games. It's very strange. It's very political, and it's a great microcosm of how hockey in Canada needs to change, combined with how uncomfortable a lot of Canadians are with change and how their reaction to change is like, to become extremely vocal about, this is going to ruin communities. It's going to ruin this. It's going to ruin that. It's going to ruin this and that and this and that. When in reality, we'll figure it out, like it'll be fine. One way or the other, we'll figure it out. But if you really want to make the situation better, don't make the situation more political and worse, I guess, which sounds obvious, but clearly not obvious enough because their reaction is to prevent hockey players from playing hockey, which I just don't understand. Thoughts on the Dickinson report from the Bob Father list? I didn't see it. The Dickinson. Scouts say he projects as a top 4 two-way blue liner. He has enough tools offensively and defensively to give himself a chance to be a top pair guy in the NHL. By a scout who added that he was a disappointment at the Holinka last summer, but is impressed all season long in the OHL. That's funny. My impression of Dickinson was the opposite. I thought he was actually pretty decent at the Holinka, and when I've seen him with London, I don't know. I like him. He's in my top 15, but goodness, there are some weak points in his game for sure. I think he'll still turn out to be a pretty good possession defender, a guy who can sort of participate offensively, but a good puck carrying defenseman. Kind of gives me like a Noah Hannafin vibe to him a little bit, which is kind of okay. But I see it. I get it. I just don't have him as high. Just saw Luke Meese at 67. Sam's going to be doing cartwheels. Yeah, I'm sad that Sam's not here to go through this with me. Thought about patching him in, but the internet in Cuba is not great. But yeah, I did talk to him today, and he was very upset. He was a mad boy. James asks, just a thought. What do you think the odds are that I get Caden Gooley by David Reinbacher? Oh God. Okay. Well, AJ, clip this for a short.
Okay. I'm on it.
that is a player that can't show his with the puck upside because his team and system are awful. I think I saw this question come up. Caden Gooley with the Prince Albert Raiders, his team was extraordinarily good. Like, he went to the WHL finals the year before he was drafted, and the team was by far the best team in their division. They had 82 points, 64 games into the season before the playoffs were canceled due to COVID. But they were 5 points clear of second place. They were among the better teams in the WHL. They were certainly in the higher echelon. So I don't understand what that means. But, look, with Caden Gooley, like, the thing about Caden Gooley isn't that all of a sudden he's like extraordinary. For me, the thing with Caden Gooley was that I undervalued just how good at defending he was when he was 17 years old. Because David Reinbacher, like, AJ, you and I watched him last year a few times.
Yes.
His defensive game was not Caden Gooley's defensive game.
No,
like
wasn't. He's more
you're
like
hoping,
Moritz Seider, and Moritz Seider is overrated.
Yes. But it's like that's kind of you're building Reinbacher's defensive game because it's not there yet. But Gooley was a monster at the time, and it's just that when he touched the puck, he yeeted it out of the defensive end and just was one of the most common guys that I ever tracked in terms of icing the puck and not maintaining possession, and that's okay. You can live with that. That's the point of why I'm talking about Caden Gooley that way, like because the evidence was there that it's like, yeah, he's good at some things, but how is he with the puck is significantly worse. But it's like, yeah, but sometimes that doesn't matter. Whereas with Reinbacher, it's almost like the defensive side of things is a work in progress, but the offensive side, he can really shoot the puck, and so can Caden Gooley. And Reinbacher can carry a puck pretty well. But anyway, I don't know. David Reinbacher is going to play NHL hockey. Like, it's going to happen. So I don't know. I just didn't have him ranked top 5. And I still think that Montreal, like they drafted with their hockey man NHL draft hat on, and I'm sure he'll be a solid defender, but I think there were other options that they might have also wanted.
And this is going to sound like I'm being an ass, but I still like Moritz Seider more, even after saying that Moritz Seider is overrated. Like, I still like him more than David Reinbacher. Because at the end of the day as well, like, you look at what Moritz Seider does, he's way more physical. And just way crazier in terms of
he is crazy. Yeah.
He is a psycho. David Reinbacher, he's fine. I don't know, like he'll be second pair guy probably, and just be fine. But like, you and I both really liked Dmitry Simashev a lot more.
Yes. Yep.
Because
did I show you the clip of him flattening Matvei Michkov in one of the games? Simashev. I think I might. I don't think I did.
No, you did not. So you can do that after.
It was glorious. Anyway, sorry, I cut you off.
No, that's all I was saying anyways.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I just think a guy like Simashev would have even been better.
Yeah.
And it's not to dunk on Habs fans. It's just what I feel.
Yeah.
Cole Caulfield's awesome. Please love me. Please love me.
Yeah, like we love a lot of the guys on the Montreal Canadiens. Mike Matheson. Can we just talk about Mike Matheson?
Yeah, he rocks.
30 seconds. That guy is like insane. Like, watching him on the Montreal power play and him carrying the puck and all that stuff. Like, you want to talk about a good modern defenseman. Like, holy smokes. Really, really good.
And Brian Stewart, I don't remember a GIF sharing.
We purged that clip from our memory. For sure. But anyway, Ivan Demidov might have the highest potential in the draft. His floor is the question. Yeah, it's low. His floor is low for sure. He can hot dog it too much. He can overhandle. He can overthink, and he gets away with it at the Russian junior level because Russian junior hockey. The KHL exposed a lot of weaknesses, I think, in his game, especially with regards to the pace of his game and his ability to generate speed and escape pressure. It's not great, but God, there's a lot of potential. There is so much there to like. What are your thoughts on AJ Spalacy of the Windsor Spitfires? Honestly, I've not seen enough of him to give you a good take, so I'll take a look. But I don't know. What kind of potential does TJ?
Because I hope fellow AJ.
That's true.
Not many of them, but more recently.
True. Yep. The next question: what kind of potential does TJ Hughes have from Michigan? Well, he's a 2001 born guy. He's 22. Again, you have to remember that Michigan is a bit of a wagon. I haven't seen enough of Michigan this year really to know, so I can't really give you a good answer. But, again, like, if he's turning 23 this season, which he is, in November this year, he'll be turning 23. You're hoping that he turns into a very good, an NHL player pretty quickly if you're going to sign him out of college. And, he was right. I remember this guy now. He was on the Brooks Bandits team with Ryan McAllister, who I liked more. I remember that. But TJ Hughes, now that you've jogged my memory, I've liked TJ Hughes. Those two guys just ripped the AJHL apart. So if you didn't know, Ryan McAllister that year had 139 points in 60 games, and TJ Hughes had 127 points in 60 games. Ryan McAllister had 29 points in 13 playoff games. Like, they just ripped that league to pieces. TJ Hughes had 66 goals in 60 games. And now he's got 31 and 22 with Michigan. I remember liking him. I totally forgot this guy existed. That's so good. Good on you for highlighting him again. But yeah, I mean, I thought Ryan McAllister was the guy sort of moving a lot of the bus for him, but still a great finisher and still a great guy around the goal mouth to chip in and play offensively. But it's also like, yeah, he's really far along in his on ice development generally. So we'll see what happens. But I imagine playing like this and remembering what I remember of him, he should be an NHL contract type level of player. Kiwi Hardy was exactly the same as he was at 14. That's true. He is very similar. Michael Brunswick Newgard is fairly low on Bob's list. Your thoughts? So he plays in a men's league and doesn't score a ton of points. I'm surprised he's that low. So if you don't know, he's at 20. But he's physical. He plays hard. I think there's a lot to like about his game. I will point out that on Bob McKenzie's list, his data from the Allsvenskan is posted, but it says he plays in junior league. He played junior for a couple of games and was insane, so they called him right back up to the pro level. He's a guy who I think NHL coaches will love. You know, he's physical, he plays hard, he's got some skill, he's a great shooter. It just hasn't quite come together for him in the pros yet, but I'm not super concerned. I think he's a guy who maybe won't be a top 6 guy. Maybe he will as a sort of energy physical guy, but a really good third line winger who can play physical but also play hockey. I think he's a good option for that. So, you know, mid first round pick to me seems reasonable. I've got him higher, but that's only because in a draft full of uncertainty, I feel like there's a lot of certainty with Michael Brunswick Newgard. Iginla will be a steal. I don't know. And neither do you. Nobody does. But he's ranked at 16 on Bob McKenzie's list. That's kind of around where I have him. And that's kind of where I think he should go. He's a good meat and potatoes guy with a good shot and pretty good skill. But he's also a super hardworking kid. So you got to value that. Thank you very much for the compliment on the Boston University jersey. I got it straight from the source. I went to Boston a couple of years ago and loved it. Love Boston. It's one of my favorite cities in America.
It's awesome.
It is awesome.
I've been once. Really nice place. Love to go again.
Yep. And I was fortunate enough to get a private tour of their practice facility in Boston, and it was friggin' amazing. Anyway, what do you think about Lane Hutson's potential in the NHL? So Lane Hutson is going to be fascinating. He is either going to be a dynamite offensive guy who plays with a very stable defensive player, or he's going to be an extremely good AHL player that just isn't trustworthy in the NHL enough for most coaches to play him. I think that I'm hopeful that Martin St. Louis knows what Lane Hutson is, has seen him play, and goes, I think I can work with this guy because I think he can. But I also see a situation where Lane Hutson has got Sidney Crosby coming down the wing and just gets annihilated, because that's what happens in college once in a while with him. But you cannot deny that he is going to be a very interesting player from here on in. He's a member of Team Scouching, so I'm ride or die. I will support Lane Hutson till the end of the world. But to me, I think the hype train is a little bit out of control on him. I was watching Macklin Celebrini not too long ago, and there were 2 goals that Lane Hutson was on the ice for at 5-on-5 that guys just went straight through him. Guys just put the puck through his legs. They dropped a shoulder, drove wide on him. But if they didn't score on shots, he got the puck, and immediately it went back the other way, and immediately he started creating stuff in the offensive zone. So he's a guy I think you're going to get a lot out of him, and you're also going to need to put up with some things. But I like him.
It's going to be like Evan Bouchard, but less of a shot and more speed and more passing.
Over under on Evan Bouchard mentions in the next 3 podcasts. I'd put it at 15.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yep.
maybe not though.
Yeah, maybe.
Evan Bouchard
Brian
sucks.
and
No,
Brian
I'm kidding.
Stewart. We got a hot take from and Brian Stewart
Oh
that
no.
cities are vastly overrated for tourism. I disagree. I will say that a lot of cities are overrated, but some are awesome. Like, here's my hot take. I think New York is overrated, but I love Boston. I love Chicago. I really like Vancouver every time I go there, but I don't think I'd say go there as a tourist unless you're like an outdoorsy person, but that's not the city. That's literally everywhere but the city. Um, if you're talking Europe, like Amsterdam is really fun. I loved Amsterdam when I was there. I like Paris a lot, especially if you can speak a little bit of French, which I would highly recommend if you're going to Paris. I love it there. I just disagree. I
like New York, but that's just me.
I mean, New York is pretty amazing. Like it's a pretty incredible place. But when I go there, I don't know. It stresses me out. But maybe that's because I grew up on the streets of downtown Toronto and like it's insanely busy there. So I don't know.
It's more busy and more smelly in New York.
Yeah. Brian mentions London. I don't mind London. I've been there a couple of times, but the only real thing I love about London is the subway system. Like it's just like it's a tourist attraction in and of itself. So is Paris though. So go to Paris instead.
You want a city that's awesome? Rome. Rome's an awesome city to go to.
I've never actually been. I've only been to Italy. I've only been to Italy once. And I shouldn't say that. That makes it sound like, I've only been to Italy once. Like I'm thumbing my nose at the camera.
I've been there 3 times,
yeah.
Will. Wish I have.
But no. But I mean, there are
Rome's
cities.
Awesome, man. Like,
yeah,
there's so many cool things because it's a city where a lot of our modern civilization sprung from, and it is awesome.
How many times do you think about the Roman Empire? Right.
Every day. But that's just me.
Yep. Oh, I'm with you most of the time. But I do agree, though, Brian. You mentioned that small French towns were beautiful and everything. So, yeah, I actually was lucky enough to spend a month in a small town in France. And it was amazing. Like the thing I do agree about cities is when you get outside of the cities, the quality of person increases, like people
Agreed.
the kinds of people who will take you in and like really, if you want to have like an interpersonal experience with someone, it's got to be outside of a city, right? Like if you're in a city, regular people there could not care less about you in most places. Like they just do not care. So if you're expecting to be treated like, like you're God's gift to them, that's not going to happen. But if you go out into the countryside, definitely changes. Like I went to Iceland for a month after I graduated university with my sister. And Reykjavik is beautiful. Reykjavik's really cool. It's a nice city, but the real joy of Iceland is basically everywhere else. It's pretty incredible. But the people in Reykjavik are kind of weird. Like they're kind of, a little squirrely. The people out in the countryside of Iceland are even more squirrely. Like they are out of their mind in some places. Like I took a bus around the country. It was like a hop on, hop off bus. And my sister and I wanted to go up into the West Fjords, which are some of the most beautiful landscapes I've ever seen in my life, which are up in the northwest of the country. Really hard to get to too. Like you can fly in, but we took a bus to the town at the base of that sort of area of the country. And we hopped in a van with a guy, and it was me, my sister, 2 other people, and a guy in a van. And we threw all of our bags in a trailer that was hitched to the back of the van, and it was unpaved. The whole road was unpaved. And Brian, you went. Akureyri is the second biggest city in the country, or not in the Reykjavik area, and yes, it is very beautiful there too. I liked it a lot. But anyway, but up in that northwest fjords, there's no paved roads, and they hug the side of fjords the whole way. So you're kind of driving around on a gravel road, whatever. This guy decides he's just ripped. Like our bags aren't strapped down or anything. They're just bouncing around in the back of a trailer. it felt like he was going 80 kilometers an hour on this gravel road in a minivan, just absolutely ripping, telling us all the craziest things about what Icelanders do. Like he was pointing out the window at houses in the countryside going, you see how they all grow trees on one side of the house? That's because it shields them from the wind, which is a large reason why Iceland still has no forests. The Vikings cut them all down, but trees also have a hard time growing there because of the wind and the climate. But you can grow trees there, and some farmers do grow trees, but only on one side of the house. And that's because they are so used to it being dark there that they grow trees on the side of the house where the sun comes up so that it's darker in their house for longer. I don't understand that, but it made sense, so I figure it's true. But that's insane. That, to me, that's insane. Like if you have 6 months of darkness, the first thing I think you would want to see is the friggin' sun, but apparently not for these people. But whatever, I digress. But anyway, you get that experience for sure outside of cities, but cities are cool. A lot of cities are cool. I do agree though, some cities are certainly overrated. More hockey questions. The Canucks could probably use another top six forward. There you go, AJ.
Oh, I was kind of addressing that. Like that's what
yeah,
came.
I know.
Anthony Duclair, baby, if you're gonna do it.
Yeah. Have I seen Heikki Ruohonen at all? No, I have not, but I'll write him down. Yep, I'll put him down. How bad could he be, right? Heikki Ruohonen. Have you seen Ben Robertson? D+1, liked him last year, and he seems to be doing the same sort of thing. Yeah, he was the guy playing with Waterloo, I think, and scoring a ton of points. I thought he was pretty skilled. He's kind of neat to watch. Yeah, he's an 04, played with Waterloo last year. Yeah, scored a ton of points. The Ivy League isn't super good, really, but he's a skilled boy, and I'm not surprised he's been a good college player. I'll keep an eye on him. I don't know if I would draft him. I don't think I would. I'd rather have Jesse Pulkkinen if we're talking about late 04 birthdays. But Robertson was kind of neat. He flirted with my list on and off last year, but didn't end up on it. Would you prefer Parekh over Levshinov? Both are spotty defensively, but Parekh seems to have more offensive upside. No, I think I'm going Levshinov. That guy just gets around better, I think, than Parekh. I think he's a more physical player than Parekh. Like Levshinov has problems with defending more because he can't like really separate players from the puck as well as he should be able to, but you can get better at that. And he does sort of abandon his defensive responsibilities a little bit, but like Zane Parekh doesn't really do much defensively like at all. So you outside of like stick checks if you skate right into him. So I don't know. I think would go with Levshinov. You're doing a fantasy draft of amateur scout analyses. Who's your top five? Boy.
Sam Cosentino, number one.
Yeah, Sam Cosentino. No, he's a pro, man. He's a pro. He's not some loser like me. He does the work. He watches the games. He goes to the rinks. I'm gonna put. I mean, I don't want to just put all the people that I agree with the most,
So
but I do.
One.
Yeah, exactly. My producer. I always love talking shop with Scott Wheeler. I think Scott Wheeler has, I disagree with some of the stuff that he puts out there. But I still think that he does a really good job with a lot of different things, but also I guess you could consider him a pro.
No, I think amateur scouting means like,
amateur, like
looking at
junior draft.
Yeah. So I think he qualifies for this.
Yeah. So I would say Scott Wheeler is one. I think Tony Ferrari is another one I'd throw out there. Just because I think he's the closest to me, and I can talk to him in my own language, and he kind of gets it, and he throws it back at me, and he's also not afraid to go, Will, what the crap are you thinking? And then I'll go look, and I'm like, usually he's right. And I think likewise the same way the other way around, but I guess you'd have to ask him. Who else? I mean, Sam counts. Sam has his own brand. Sam is descriptive, but I enjoy that about him. He finds ways to take things that could be said in a sentence and a half and turn them into paragraphs, which is fine by me. I don't mind that at all, but And he makes up words to describe things, and I love that about him. I just love unique people, and Sam is by far one of the most unique people.
Do you want to tell
in
the
my,
Sam
in my life.
No-Frills story?
Oh yeah. It's such a good story that I might have to skip the rest of the questions because we're already running over time, and this is a good one. So oh my god, I'm so excited. So the other day I am out. Friends of ours are traveling. They left their cat at home. So they asked us to go feed the cat, give some attention to the cat, whatever. So we volunteer to do that. Okay, that's still on. So we go volunteer to do that. I go, and while I'm out, I'm near East Hamilton, Ontario, and I'm like, well, I gotta go get groceries anyway. I may as well go get some groceries. So I looked at the nearest grocery stores, and there's a No Frills. If you live in the States, No Frills is a discount, quote unquote, grocery store. And you can buy food there, and there are lots of them. They're sort of like cheap Loblaws, I guess you could say, run by a family of billionaires, one of the few Canadian families of billionaires. But anyway, I digress. So I go to the No Frills, and I know that it's in East Hamilton, and I know roughly-ish that, Sam lives somewhere around there. I've never been to his house. But I do know that in Hamilton and the eastern side of it is kind of the area where he is. But I go to No Frills, and I'm in the No Frills, and I text him. I'll just get the text message conversation out now. But I text him, and where is he? Here he is. So I said, this is Wednesday at 5:00 last week. Are you familiar with Franco's No Frills? If you're not aware, No Frills puts the name of the people who franchise it on the store. So mine, like, I won't, whatever. But are you familiar with this No Frills? I am there. And he responds with, the popular grocery store? That's wild. And I internalized that as, oh, it's always really busy. He comes here all the time. It must be busy all the time. And it wasn't. So I responded, this is a popular place. It's dead, just like East Hamilton, which I thought was pretty funny. And then he goes, wait a minute. Is this how I learned that this No Frills is not the name of this No Frills is not the same as every No Frills around us? And he said, I thought you just meant the one like by your house. It sounds like you may be the one near me. And I said, wait a minute. Did you think that all No Frills stores were named after this one person? And he said, yes, I just never thought about it that much. Why is mine named after this person? And I said, because that's the guy who owns it. I said, this is amazing. And then he responds with, does he not own them all? How did this guy franchise this? And I just responded with, this is wonderful. And then he said, I am so confused, and you broke my brain with No Frills out of anything. And I said, I have no clue. And I didn't even notice this at the time. He responded with, is that the first No Frills? Like, and that's where it ended.
He's so crazy.
But that's amazing. It's amazing. I love Sam.
Sam's 26, 26 years old?
Yeah, late 20s.
And thought all No Frills were Franco's No Frills. It's just amazing.
God, so good.
So you were on a question about mock draft.
Fantasy draft,
yes,
yeah.
Fantasy.
So I'd throw Joel Henderson in there. Joel Henderson for sure could go in there. Who else? I think Mitch Brown as well. I think Mitch Brown is just doing the work, again, similar to Scott Wheeler. Like, I don't agree with everything he puts out there. And I have my thoughts and I have my feelings about player cards and scouting data and all that stuff, but I still respect the work he does. I think that what he does is tremendously valuable in its own way. And no one else is out there doing what he does. And I know he's really busting his butt to do what he does, and he works really hard. And he pulls some names out of a hat that, at first I go, I don't know about this, but honestly, it's taught me a lot over the years about what to look for and how to refine what I'm seeing, and also just to sort of trust my gut and trust what I'm seeing and what I'm seeing in the data. So those are probably 5 guys I'd throw out there. I'm just gonna scroll through these because we're running over time, and my voice is also pretty shot. Is there anyone in the NHL draft that resembles Marco Rossi? Not really. Otherwise, they'd be probably first overall. I mean, it's a hard question to answer, but I don't think so. I'm just also killing time before I pull up my list. Yeah, I mean, the closest thing would be Berkeley Catton, maybe. Maybe the closest thing, but I don't know if I'd throw him in that category. That category, get it? Because Berkeley Catton. Um, How do you measure a defenseman's offensive contribution when making the first pass to start a transition safely out of the defensive zone? I mean, that's kind of like a must-have. Like that's kind like if you have a defenseman who can't pass the puck out of their own end, that's a problem in a lot of ways. Like you got to be able to get it out of your own zone one way or the other, ideally with possession. That like to me that's like very, very important.
Yeah, it's kind of a non-starter when
you can tell very quickly the guys who are able to do that and the guys who are not. Can they learn? Sure, but it is very important. Have I watched any of the PWHL? I have. Toronto stinks, as is tradition. I love the Minnesota team. I am finding that there's like individual players that I've really loved watching. Obviously, Kendall Coyne Schofield is one of those. Keller and Cameronese, and it's nice to see Sarah Nurse play. I've always liked Sarah Nurse. Chloe Arard, the French woman now playing really, really good there. Yeah, hashtag failing for Fillier, or Fillier. I can't recall if it's Fillier or Fillier. Anyway, but yeah, she's out there too, just waiting to be in the PWHL, and maybe she's in Toronto next year. Who knows? Nicest NCAA jerseys in your opinion? Top 5. Oh gosh. Let's see if I can find a hockey uniforms. I mean, Michigan is up there for sure. Michigan rules.
Awesome.
I love Maine's jerseys. I think Maine has a good look. The powder blue and everything. I just think of Paul Correa, and I'm biased on that. I want to say one of the Alaska teams has really cool ones. I don't know if it's Alaska. I don't know.
There's a great question coming up, Will.
Yeah. Yeah, the Alaska University Nanooks or Seawolves. The Seawolves is the one that I'm thinking about. They've got a really good one. Who else? Those are good starts, and I guess we can move on. Yeah, I guess we can move on from there. Oh, Arizona State University. Yep, those ones too. Arizona State's look rules. But I'm also biased. What do we have a really good question? Joshua Waugh had an assist against Boston on Saturday. That was actually a very nice play. I saw that. That was really, really nice. Why is he your favorite generational player of all time? How much more money than McDavid will he make in his career? Do you have a Waugh jersey?
Well, that's an awesome question then.
That is a great question. I do not have a Joshua Waugh jersey, but I imagine there's probably going to be one in the mail from someone sometime in the next 5 years when he wins an Art Ross trophy, just like I predicted.
Definitely not.
Definitely not. What else do we have here that we can go over here?
James Denier, I think.
Yeah.
There's an Iginla in the draft, and the Habs look like they'll draft around 8th. Which future ECHLer will they pick instead?
Maxime Massé, maybe. Go with the French connection. Go with Maxime Massé. I don't know. I watched Massé today, and I did not think he was very good, but that's okay. He's big and he skates okay, but that's basically it. But maybe he's a first-round pick. Who knows? I wouldn't do it.
But yeah, I like that question.
That is a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. I think that'll be it for today. A lot of talk about different travel tips. I mean, if you want more travel tips, feel free. Slip into my DMs, join the Discord server. We always have silly conversations like that.
Yep. I'm going to go watch Arizona Coyotes hockey, and people in the Discord, if you would like to join me, you're more than welcome.
Yeah, who would say no to watching the Arizona Coyotes with a psycho Toronto Maple Leafs fan?
Wow.
I'm kidding.
I appreciate the love, Will.
It's the fact that you're so supportive is all. That's all. I admire it, but I think
I'll never
nuts.
give up. I'll never give up, Will.
I know. Good for you.
I'm not gonna let Toronto break me the way that it's broken other people. I will always believe.
Okay.
But hey, I've pumped the brakes this year a bit on them. But like I just believe in that core group. The same way I believe McDavid's going to win a cup. It's like he's too good
Well,
not
yes,
to. Right?
that is true.
And it's Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Riley, too good not to win a cup together.
Yep. Fair
That's
enough.
kind of the way I look at it.
Fair enough. They said the same thing about Matt Sundin, but that was more because the team sucked.
Yes.
But anyway, we don't have to talk
He
about
was
the Leafs.
one player.
All right. Well, that'll be it for today. Thank you very much. This was a ton of fun. Producer AJ, thank you very much. Of
You're
course.
welcome.
Also, thank you to the Also, thank you to our sponsors: Fanatics, Puck Preps, Scouching, obviously, FractalHockey.com, all the good stuff. Check all that stuff out. It's all in the description. Thank you very much for joining us. This was a ton of fun, and we'll see you on Thursday afternoon for another fun one. I hope. Sure, we'll call it. We'll say that and move on. But anyway, thank you very much, and have a great part of your week.